paid. She paid. When they paid, we paid. This world is full of calamity, and the whole human race is feeling it. And the worst part is they're in captivity, but they don't even realize it. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope your day is going well. Excuse me. We can start here momentarily. It's allowing some time for the notification to go out. If you can, please hit the like button so that those who subscribe to the ministry channel can notification go out to more of them. You guys see me in less than 30 seconds, and then we'll open up prayer and get the class or documentary watch for tonight started. Appreciate it, brothers and sisters. Also, you see me soon. At the world, what became it? Look how far we fell from our time in the garden, but now we have Christ. They looking at black and white, they ain't looking right. They don't see the real slave master. There is a devil and angels, principalities in the unseen realm. Why did you wish? Why did you bring? Good afternoon once again, brothers and sisters. If it's your first time joining us, I'm Pastor Jay. If it's not your first time, welcome back. We'll get started right after the song. I won't go back. All because of me. He told us to get that fruit from that tree. Cause the day that you eat at that tree, you're gonna die. Please believe me. You open your eyes and just look around and see that it is our fault. No one to blame. It's our fault. All the evil. It's our fault. Hold up, wait a minute. Let me tell you a secret. The wisdom of God planned to fall. They treat us like seeds to plant us in the ground. Sin was the carrier. Christ was the mission. Now we are born again. Eternal life here is. Because we ate the fruit. All right. Hope you brothers and sisters are doing well. Once again, if it's your first time joining us, I'm Pastor Jay. If it's not your first time, welcome back. You guys see the title. We are going to be watching the documentary that I spoke about yesterday. And it's very informative. There's some things at the very beginning that I want to show you guys. Probably a couple of minutes into it. We're going to pause it. I want to show you a couple of things, then we'll go back to it, and then I'll let it play. But as you guys see the title, The Corrupt Church and Santa. Obviously, we are still dealing with the topic of Christmas and all those things. Obviously, we should not live lives of giving into myths and legends and straight lies and paganisms and superstitions and things like that. These things are vain. People that believe these things have vain faiths that's not rooted on anything factual or real, but just the figment of their imaginations, whatever makes them feel good. And so some parents, in a quest to make their children feel good, lie to their children every year during the season here. And And the children, being in their ignorance, being that their parents are lying to them, they tend to believe in these little characters and these myths and things. And so with real expectations, they're looking out for flying deers, and all deers are four-footed animals that walk along the ground. They're not flocks of the air, but you know, uh, and though many of the homes don't even have chimneys, they still believe this is God is coming to give them presents, and their parents tiptoe around the house, wrapping toys and stuff up and putting on there. This came from this guy that the kids never met. And even if they go to the mall, it's a guy only faking it. And some people in the more, I'll call it the more intellectual driven sects within the Christian church. So like, uh, on, I don't want to say Protestant and just leave it there, because the Protestant side of the church, which is, even saying that is terrible, but the Protestant side has many denominations, and so I have been a Protestant on the Protestant side all my life. Though I grew up in a Pentecostal holiness church, that's on the Protestant side. Grandfather Baptist, Protestant side. Um, you know, Zion AME, all those denominations that I either played as a musician or grew up in or visited because I have family members part of different denominations. They're all from the Protestant side. I had the family I did have. Uh, I don't know many of them that's from the other side, meaning like the Catholic side and stuff. I know they're in my family, but most of them are Protestant side, even if they were Jehovah's Witnesses and things like that. But and you had those who didn't celebrate Christmas and those who did. My family was heavy Christmas doers, and we got the same things. We got, as little children, we got played tricks on. There was a little phone number you can call Santa and tell him what you want, and but the whole time it was my father on the other side. I didn't know that until years later. My mom just kind of just said it randomly. That's what it was at that point. Hey, childhood childhood memories destroyed. But and so but these type of things people do under the guise that they're loving their, showing love to their children and the festivities and it's for the kids and all these things, man. But they breaking God's law left and right. And so there are some people that's on the more intellectual driven side of things who do a lot more research and stuff like that. uh they don't tend to just go along. Let me back up here. Not go along, they still go along, but they have a more in-depth, detailed explanation of the origin of things. And so they like to let you guys know that these things aren't pagan in origin, even though these things are myths and lies and legends, but that instead they're built upon something that had to do with the church and not with pagans. And so you guys hear people bring up this Saint Nick. Now we're going to focus on Saint Nick because this is about Santa and Christmas. But we want to focus on Saint Nick, because for those who say Christmas ain't pagan, and you got people that saying no, Santa Claus comes from Odin, from the Nordic people, it comes from this, it comes from this, and all these similarities. But then there's these certain people within the church that bring you information that says, no, it has nothing to do with Odin, despite the similarities. It has nothing to do with that, despite the similarities. It had nothing. It's not an amalgamation of all these little lies and stuff like that. No, it is Christian in origin. And when they tell you it's Christian in origin, there's one man that they keep bringing up, okay? And that man name was Saint Nicholas, all right? And so Santa Claus, the name Santa Claus, is based upon this Saint Nick guy, okay? But when they bring up Saint Nicholas, they only talk about like this legend about him. They don't talk much more about the guy. They talk about this legend about him, and them just having that story, that legend regarding this man is enough for them, all right, to say it's not pagan in origin, it's Christian in origin. Well, we're going to look at this man, we're going to look at this legend, we're going to look at who he is, and and how vital he is, or how important he is in the church. And we're gonna, when I say the church, specifically the Roman Catholic Church, or the Eastern Orthodox traditions. But nevertheless, how important he became to the world because of this legend and Saint Nick. But there's a lot of evil that's going on around this stuff, man. And just like we talked about yesterday, if you understand that that Jesus Christ, the apostles, and the faithful men of old didn't even celebrate birthdays in general, and therefore you have the same mindset as them, you be safe, because you would have nothing to do with Saturnalia, you would have nothing to do with uh, Christmas, you would have nothing to do with your own birthday celebration, you would have nothing to do with any of those things, and so you be safe, and you won't fall into the trap as many believers do, who make a big deal about their birthdays, and they go, and then they fall into worse things like horoscopes and things like that, and walking around talking about what their sign is and stuff. So uh but for those who don't understand about the birthdays in general, and they're just looking at the traditions and the customs and Santa Claus, and people like, man, these are lies. I'm not telling my children this. And for those reasons, they won't have nothing to do with it. That's fine, right? Stay away from the lies and stuff. For those who see these things are just made up stories and myths and legends and stuff like, but they don't care. They're just like, well, that's not why I do it. And they still participate in the feast. And then when it comes to the Santa Claus, they, instead of just saying, this is wicked, it's a lie, it's a myth, there's no fat man running around, like that's a whole figment of people's imaginations. We should have nothing to do with that. Instead of saying that, they'll instead, in their defense for all their traditions for Christmas, they'll keep bringing up Saint Nick. So we got to deal with that. We got to deal with Saint Nick. And so I don't know if it was last year or the year before that. We played this documentary or whatever, but we'll play it again and go through these things. Um, let's see here. Um, uh, so I'm gonna play the first. I'm gonna let it get through the start, and when it talks on Saint Nicholas, it's gonna touch on him in the early stages, at the very beginning, actually, because it's upon him that this legend of Santa Claus is built upon. And so once we get into the Saint Nick thing and a couple of things that's said, I'm gonna have to pause it to highlight things that was said and show you the idolatry that the Santa Claus is built upon, even upon this man named Saint Nick. Okay, so let's go ahead and put this on the screen, and let's go ahead and start. And of course, if any question come up, the chat section is open, um, and then Lord's will, we'll deal with that in time. So fair use, because this is not mine. I don't own the rights to this YouTube. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. It's very important. And kids, make sure you pay attention as well. It's important as you continue to grow up that you don't fall prey to these superstitions and lies and myths and legends, and these things that really are turning you away from Christ. Because remember, last night, I'll see this last thing. Remember last night during the class, the question was asked, when did the church start celebrating birthdays? When that became a thing in the Christian church, being that for 200 to 300 years, everybody avoided it because they knew it was paganism and stuff. And the information that was pulled up, it talked about late third, fourth century, but it made a point and it said this began when the church abandoned the teaching and belief that celebrating birthdays was uh, pagan and celebration of evil. So, in order for Christmas to have even been established and this whole legend of Saint Nick to take root to become Santa Claus and all these other little things, before any of that stuff could happen, first there had to be an introduction of some type of doctrine or change in interpretation in the church regarding celebrating birthdays in general to make this work. Okay, so the very foundation of all this, there had to be a departure from a previous belief that stood in the church. Okay, so that's very important. Now let's go ahead into this as we get into Saint Nick, and then we look at these other things. All right, fair use.
to search for gifts. And traditionally, a time for the family. And a time to look for presents. Children all over the world are busy drawing up their lists.
Oh, we got to take a pause, y'all. In my introduction, I forgot to start us off with prayer. So let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll go back to the documentary. So, Heavenly Father, you always thank you for the day, for allowing us to come together, Lord, to hear your word read and explained, to look at this information regarding these things going on in our generation, these things that began before we were born, things that uh, caused many to change their mind and depart from previously held belief and stance by those who believed in the Lord and his apostles, to keep us out of idolatry and paganism and other wicked things, Lord. But somewhere along the way, we went astray, and many people has fallen prey to these things in their ignorance, and some people just willfully ignorant. And so, Lord, as we look at this documentary that goes over some of this information, Lord, pray that you give us listening ears and observing eyes as we go through these things. Lord, may you oversee this class for today. Lord, may you help all your people, keep us out of the hands of the evil one who always seeks to destroy us. Lord, and remind us daily what it means to be part of Christ's body and his blood and how we should walk and act. Lord, being ready always to suffer for your name's sake, be ready to lay down our rights for one another, considering one another's consciences. And so, Lord, all these things that you continue to grow us more and more in the image of your dear son, Yeshua of Nazareth, our Lord. And so, Lord, we thank you for all these things in your son, Yeshua of Nazareth's name. Amen. All right. All right. Now let's go back to it.
But who is this character that has become so popular at this time of the year? And is he the same the world over? And why does he live in such a remote place? Does he always look the same?
He has a big beard and a white mustache.
He has a big tummy because he ate lots of food.
And when he went into your house, he wasn't beyond playing with the family pet or maybe stealing a turkey leg from the refrigerator.
And he walks in the snow, and then he comes down the chimney and gives you presents.
Because Santa loves all the boys and girls, yes.
Santa Claus has remained somewhat up for grabs. There's been a little bit of a battle over who Santa Claus is.
Skipping to commercials.
Our search for Santa begins not in the cold of the North Pole, but in the heat of southwest Turkey during the 3rd century. This area, it is claimed, was the birthplace of St. Nicholas, but little real evidence survives of his existence.
That doesn't mean he didn't actually exist. It just, he lived so long ago. We ain't got no survival papers. Okay. But nevertheless, remember the questions that I was asked at the beginning when it was saying in the introduction of the documentary, it was saying the legend of Santa Claus in different parts of the world. And it was asking different questions, does he look the same everywhere? Does he do the same stuff everywhere? So what we about to see, what's about to hit on right now is the origin of all the legends of Santa Claus. This is all built upon one man, okay? One man named Saint Nick. And then the legend of him and the stories, people adding stuff, embellishing it, it's like the telephone game. And so in different parts of the world, the story about this man has varying degrees and varying variances. It ain't the same. Okay. So this is very important. So all Santa Clauses, all right, are built upon this one man that you don't got that much information surviving about. So a lot of things about his life is embellished, made up, or just pure stories, legends. Okay. All right. Now let's go into this.
According to legend, he was unique even as a baby, abstaining from his mother's breast until sundown on Wednesdays and Fridays, the early Christian fast days.
Let's rewind this again. This is important. Okay.
And he was unique even as a baby, abstaining from his mother's breast until sundown on Wednesdays and Fridays, the early Christian fast days.
Now, though children are supposedly so ignorant that they can't be held accountable for their sins until the age of accountability, one of the legends regarding this Saint Nick baby is that when he was born, though ignorant and can't discern good from evil, somehow he knew to fast on Christian fast days. And he was abstaining from his mother's breast until sundown on Wednesday and Fridays, which was Christian fast days back then. Okay. And so the story is already beginning. All right.
Recently excavated from the effects of an earthquake, this church in Demre, known in Nicholas's time as Myra, is named in his honor. The now empty tomb is reputed to weep a manna, a fluid which even today is believed to have healing powers, and once a year on the 6th of December, the day Nicholas died, pilgrims partake of the manna.
So what y'all seeing right here is when the Roman Catholics or Eastern Orthodox people, when they venerate saints, they will have a feast day for that particular saint. This is what you're watching right now. This is a feast day for Saint Nicholas, and the people come together and they're partaking of manna and all this other stuff, and they're rubbing on the empty tomb and all this worship stuff going on. Okay, it's about to get deeper than what most people probably thought. All right.
Nicholas's election as Bishop of Myra was unusual, to say the least. A senior member of the conclave heard a voice in the night telling him to elect the first person to enter the church that following morning. That person happened to be Nicholas, and the boy bishop was crowned.
All right. So we know what the pastoral epistles say when it's talking about, the type of people that can be leaders over the Lord's church and what kind of character they should have. And then, there shouldn't be a new convert and things like that, lest they fall into the snare of the devil. But in this legend, you have this boy that they said that even as an ignorant baby still sucking his mama's breast, he would not suck on his mama's breast on Wednesday and Fridays until sundown, the days of the Christian fast. Okay, that's one of the, it's kind of how they'll be embellishing Mary. But here we got with Saint Nick. Okay, later on, while he's a boy, all right, not a man, not a father, not having his own home to rule or manage so that he can then learn to manage the house of God or anything like that. No, as a little boy, all right, someone else, whoever that person was told in the middle of the night, supposedly by an angel, whoever, to elect as bishop the first person that comes to the church that day or walks through the door, whatever. And that was the little boy, Saint Nick. Okay. And he became the elect bishop as a little boy. All right. This is all working up to his status that he's known as today in the church. All right.
He became the patron saint of children after resurrecting 3 boys who'd been slaughtered by a butcher during a period of famine. He's also the patron saint of sailors. But his most famous exploit deals with a poor man who had 3 daughters. The eldest was past the marrying age, the second was the right age, but nobody had asked her for her hand.
Now, this is the story that you always hear when people bring him up. This is what you're hearing right now.
Even today, the custom exists in East Antalya that a father has to provide a dowry for his daughter to get married.
Then, remarkably, the eldest daughter asked her father to sell her as a slave so that her sisters could be provided with dowries.
Ve babası tabii ki çok...
After hearing his eldest daughter, the father was very upset. And one day in his home, he prays to God to help his daughters to get married. St. Nicholas hears this, and in order to help him, he throws a bag of gold coins through the window.
Pencereden içeri atar.
Over the centuries, the tale has evolved into St. Nicholas throwing bags of coins down a chimney where they landed in stockings hanging up to dry.
So far now, the language that they're using, like patron saint and things like that, and even in the beginning when you guys seen, they were doing that feast day done unto him. They don't do that to everybody. They only do that to certain individuals. All right. And so we need to deal with what you was watching, all right, what they were doing there for this feast. Why do he got a feast day? Okay. Throwing some bad coins, helping somebody out with a dowry. These things aren't so special. You get a whole feast day. Okay. Why? What makes it possible for a person to get their own feast day in the church? All right, this is important because this is what's happening with St. Nick. And these stories that you're hearing is the things that are told about him that have now been embellished. So like what you just heard just now. So in real life, it is said that he gave the coins to the so that the little girls can get married, or whatever the case is. And then somebody embellished the story to now, when they tell a tale now, and this became popular, which all the Santa Claus is built upon, is that he gave these gifts or these coins down a chimney or through the window, and it landed in stockings. Okay, and this is where you get the custom of people putting stockings on the chimney on the thing of the fireplace, and then Santa Claus is supposed to put gifts in it. In this case, candy canes and little cars and little toys like that. All right, so that's where these little customs is coming from, to kind of try to reenact what Saint Nick did, even though that's an embellished add-on, something that he didn't actually do. Okay, so this is all important now. But what you saw in the beginning, what they were doing with this whole feast day thing, and they call him a patron saint. So somebody be like, well, let's just pull some of this up on the screen. What is a patron saint? Okay, I say he was the patron saint of sailors and the patron saint of little kids and all this other stuff. So a patron saint is a saint who is believed to advocate for a person, place, activity, or other group in heaven. Okay? In heaven. So when somebody's a patron saint, when you're alive, right? Patron just means like a sponsor or like an intercessor, or you help somebody. Okay, so like for example, when you read in the book of Acts, even though it doesn't call the Apostle Paul a patron saint, right? But his actions is that somebody would categorize as a patron saint, in the sense of this. In the book of Acts, chapter I think it's 21, when he went to Jerusalem, and then and the elders were trying to convince him what he should do to appease the Jewish crowd, who would be upset when they heard that he came into town because of the things that they heard about him, and that he was teaching, that he was supposedly teaching the Gentiles, or teaching the Jews that live among the Gentiles, to no longer circumcise their children, and not to keep the customs of Moses. And they said, this is what we want you to do. We have 4 men who are here to take a Nazarite vow. They wanted Paul to sponsor or pay for them to do the import, to pay for their for the ceremony, where they would then customarily come and chop their hair off and present it to the priest there at the altar, and they would have to make an atonement for their sins. All right, and they wanted Paul to sponsor it. Okay, now he didn't get to do the whole thing. He started it because he was going to do it, but God intervened, so they wouldn't go down. Paul was taken. He didn't get to finish the whole little thing with them, and that whole little thing, and then he goes off into jail and all this other stuff to make his appeal to Caesar eventually. So that's why he was alive, right? So he was like a helper of those men there that was doing that Nazarite vow. Here, when you're talking about a patron saint, All right. And it's talking about a saint who's believed to advocate, all right, or intercede for a person, a place, meaning a region, an activity, or other group in heaven. Okay. In heaven. So we're not talking about here on earth, you just helping somebody out. We're talking about you on the other side of life in heaven, all right, advocating for people. That's the first thing. All right. Now, those on the Protestant side of things, for the most part, I don't know all the ins and outs of every single little sect, but for the most part, as a majority, the Protestants don't believe that. All right. You don't go praying to saints and stuff like that. So, nevertheless, though, on the Roman Catholic side and Eastern Orthodox side, they believe in stuff like that. Okay. Now, in order for you to become this kind of status, all right, there's a process that has to happen first. All right. Which is, we may hear the terminology called the canonization of the saints. Okay. You know how you hear about the canon, meaning like the canon Bible, right? Or not the canon Bible like it's a version of the Bible, but when we say the canon, right? The 66 books, that's the canon, right? So when you hear words like canon, then there's also and it means basically the authorized books according to the church. That's basically what it means. But canonization of the saint is a totally different thing. It's a long drawn out process, but it's a different thing where you take certain people that get elected, and then go through this lengthy process to where then the Pope has the authority to canonize them as a saint. And then it's this status. And then you'll hear another thing that's called, and I'll put it on the screen in a second, beatification. All right. And then which goes into veneration. And this is what allows you to be venerated or worshipped in some limited sense, worshipped by other saints. And this belief, where you get this patron saint stuff from, that you could pray to the saint and then they could intercede for you in heaven so that your prayers can get heard by God or Christ. And this is why you have people pray to Mary and all this other stuff. All right. So it's a lot going on in this. And it's from that status that they then dedicate a feast day to that particular saint. Okay. And so, and the relics and all this other stuff come into play, and then all that's important. We was talking about these relics things the other day. So when we talk about beatification or canonization, it's a lengthy process. All right, a process of declaring one a saint in the Catholic Church is called canonization. So this is not just like in the Bible when you believe we're called saints, the saints of God, like the Apostle Paul called the church the saints. This is a new thing that came later on after the apostles when you talk about the canonization of the saints. Okay. And so it's declaring one a saint in the Catholic Church is called canonization. The canonization process is a canonical, meaning church law, procedure by which the church, through the Pope, solemnly declares a Catholic to be united with God in heaven and intercessory to God on behalf of the living and worthy of public and universal veneration. Okay. So this is what the, canonization of a saint is. Okay. And it's a long, lengthy process. It talks about how it goes about that. But then the next thing above that, or by it, you see beatification. And beatification, all right, in the Roman Catholic Church, is a ceremony that recognizes a deceased person as blessed or worthy of limited public veneration. So this is where you get why do you keep hearing people say, "Oh, the Blessed Virgin Mary"? Why do they keep talking like that? All right, we call her blessed in a sense that she found favor with God and was chosen out of all the women that would ever exist to bring about the Christ child into the world. So we call her blessed because she found favor with God. Okay. But when the Catholic Church calls the person blessed, all right, this is a whole different level. Okay. It's a whole different level, brothers and sisters. All right. And so when they call them blessed, this beatification that brings about this blessed title for them in the Roman Catholic Church is a ceremony that recognizes a deceased person as blessed and worthy of limited public veneration. Veneration meaning worship. All right. Now, it goes through what the word means. All right. But how to become that. Right. Beatification is the second step in the process of canonization, which we just talked about before, which is the official admission into sainthood. All right. This is not what the Lord has done for all us believers. This is an extra thing the church does. All right. Specifically the Roman Catholic Church and Eastern Orthodox traditions. And then people just kind of, take hold of that. If they like break off, they might still hold on to pieces of these things. The title of or beatification, a person who is beatified is given the title blessed and is often referred to as a blessed or blesseds. So when you the Blessed Virgin Mary, like when they keep saying stuff like that, that's what this is going into. Why? Because she's reached that status in the church. Now, the way that they get there, the Catholic Church requires evidence that the person is in heaven. Because this beatification thing, all right, when they start canonizing saints, like for example with Saint Nick, all right, Saint Nick died in 343. He wasn't canonized until 1446. So now when you go back to the beatification and canonization thing, the Catholic Church requires evidence that the person that they want to canonize is in heaven. Now, how did they get confirmation for this? You might wonder. How did they get confirmation that somebody like Saint Nick is in heaven? He's dead. They can't go to his grave and verify that. He either have to like come back and tell them, or something else happens that would verify that he's in heaven somehow. Okay. So this is where in the canonization or the veneration or beatification process gets very interesting, because of how they go about figuring about there's some to verify this person's in heaven. Okay. So let's go back to that. The Catholic Church requires evidence that the person is in heaven, usually in the form of a miracle attributed to the person's intervention. So what that means is that somebody that's alive, okay, who was like sick, lame, blind, deaf, something where it can be verified that they had a disease that was incurable, okay? Not a common cold that you could get better in a few days or a week or two. It had to be something grave that no one could take away, all right? And then there has to be this, really an idea, because they really can't confirm this. But nevertheless, the person who was lame or sick or hurt or whatever the case is, okay, that no one could help, either had to pray to Saint Nick or some other saints that's alive on the earth, pray in the name or pray to Saint Nick about this particular person in their illness or disease. And then if the person miraculously gets healed, then that miracle would be attributed to Saint Nick or Mary or whoever. All right. It would be attributed to that person because they have been praying in the name of that person. So the fact that they prayed to Mary and said, "Oh, Blessed Virgin Mary, oh, how I would wish to have a boy child," right? And then they get pregnant, but they got to wait until the child come out to find out what it is. Then when the child comes out 9 months later, 10 months later, if it's a boy, then they would attribute the fact that they had a boy to Mary's intervention. They didn't see Mary. Mary didn't talk to them. They got no visual or voice-like confirmation. It's just that they just believed Mary could hear them, prayed to Mary, and if the prayer is answered, they attributed it to that saint. Okay? So one of the evidences that it would go about to canonize or beatify a saint is usually in the form, because they had other ways too, but usually in the form of a miracle attributed to the person's intervention. All right. Not why the person's alive, not, St. Nick walked and there was a person that was lame and he laid hands on him and right there before everybody, the guy got healed. Not that. Okay. But he's dead already. A couple hundred years later, somebody says, "Hey, we vote we want to what's the word? We want to elect or whatever this particular person. So now they start this process. Okay, do we got any like relatives of his, any people that can give us some stories of how this guy was and how he lived? So then people start coming with the stories and blah blah blah. Okay, and then all right, then then they're like they need verification that the guy that they want to elect is in heaven. So they would then pray to the person, and if the thing they ask for happens, then that would be to them a verification the person's in heaven. Okay. And so, however, a miracle is not required for beatification if the person was martyred for the Catholic faith. So if the person got head chopped off, then when they get elected, when somebody want to elect them to this position of being canonized and beatified and stuff, they don't necessarily need to pray to that person and have some miracle happen for them to, lift them up to the status. But if this person had been confirmed to have got their head chopped off or something like that for the faith, then they could bypass the miracle thing because they would just assume because you got your head chopped off for the faith, you're automatically in heaven. Okay. So, and as a result of that, after you reach that status, all right, the Catholic Church services can be held in honor of the person in places associated with them. And this is where you get where they dedicate a church to a particular saint. So like that church you was watching when they was doing that feast day at, that was a church that was dedicated to that Saint Nick. Then you'll have other churches that dedicated to Mary, other churches that's dedicated to another saint. So this is what's going on here. Churches shouldn't be dedicated to people or saints. All right. The church is the body of the Lord, and where you physically meet up, whether it's in a garage or a tomb, or not a tomb, but in a cave or whatever the case is, that's just where the church is gathering at. But when they go the extra mile, all right, want to canonize people, venerate them, give them feast days, and all this other stuff, and then and dedicate buildings to them, that's going well beyond what the Lord had allowed when you read the scriptures. The Lord didn't even suffer the disciples to be arguing with one another who's the greatest. The Apostle Paul told the believers, don't even split yourself up by saying, I'm a Peter, I'm a Paul, I'm a Apollos, and all this other stuff. Christ ain't dividing, we all for your benefit. There was never a pastoral anniversary ever mentioned in the Holy Scriptures where one leader is esteemed and given feast days while the other leaders ain't given no feast day. Okay? So these are people, human beings that are sinning and doing these things, but it's from this, okay? It's from this that you didn't have these embellished stories, all right, because of these ideas that this person's interceding for them and miracles are happening because they're praying to the saint and this saint is getting to God and then God answers your prayer. It's from these type of stuff that all the legends of Santa Claus is built, okay? So I wanted to take time when they dealt with him, all right, and talked about him being canonized, okay, and this patron saint thing had to do with they believed that they were intervening and advocating for people in the heaven, all right, meaning they dead, okay? And so now let's go back. Let's see here. I had a couple of things on here. What does it mean when a person is canonized? Beatification requires one attested miracle and allows the beatified person to be venerated by his local church. Canonization requires 2 attested miracles and allows veneration of the saint by the universal church. Canonization is an infallible statement by the church that the saint is in heaven. They've made the judgment. When you reach canonization status in the Catholic Church or the Eastern Orthodox Church, the church is making an infallible, meaning they is not wrong, statement by the church that saint that they've canonized is in heaven. All right. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And that's why they can pray and attribute their prayers being heard to that saint and give them feast days and all this other stuff. Okay. Even though God makes the final decisions, but they make infallible statements when they canonize people. And it's from this canonization that you even have a feast day done in honor to this man, whether he really existed or not. And it's because of that status that they have these relics and they rubbing his tomb and doing all this other stuff. And it's from that and these embellished stories that the legends of Santa Claus is built upon. Okay. So when y'all hear apologists saying Santa ain't pagan in origin, is Christian in origin, and they want to reference to y'all Saint Nick, ask them who that is. And why is he so revered? What's his status in the church? And when you look into that, all that brings you back to idolatry. Idolatry. Okay? And it's strange belief, and why they praying and bowing down to statues and kissing Mary statues and stuff like that. It's the same reason why they treat Saint Nick like that. He just ain't as high a status as Mary is. All right? So I want y'all to understand that as we go into these things here. All right. So this ain't simply, oh, it was a, old great saint man. And, and so the world just loved him and, and then Santa Claus was built. No. See, this saint that they're telling you that is based upon is a saint that the church worships through idolatry and believe that he be advocating and answering their prayers in heaven and stuff like that. And they believe having his tomb and relics and things like that connects them to him. All right. These superstitions and things like that. And that is what the superstition of Santa Claus is built upon. All right. Let's go back to this documentary. I wanted to take time and show y'all that. Let me just make sure that I already talked about it, so I don't need to show y'all that. Patron saint. I already read that. All right, we're good. Let's go back to this thing here.
It was this act of generosity, as well as his miraculous healing powers, that gave Nicholas his legendary status. Following his canonization in the 9th century, Nicholas became the favorite saint in the Christian calendar. Throughout Europe, thousands of churches were dedicated to him. As Turkey came under Muslim control, late in the 11th century, sailors from Bari in Italy succeeded in spiriting away his bones, and an extraordinary church was built over his shrine.
All right, so you see in the back, all right, a shrine. Now, somebody be like, what's a shrine? All right, and for the kids, what's a shrine? What is a shrine? Okay, and I'm just pulling this up so it can just be on here, and it's as if you was looking it up yourself. A shrine is a place regarded as holy because its associations with a divinity or a sacred person or relic marked by a building or other construction. All right, and on the right, there's an example of a shrine. This is where you would go to worship. Okay, the heathens would do this for their gods and goddesses, and so the church adopted this practice and started making shrines to people. Okay, in this case, Saint Nick got a shrine. All right, and this is where they would go. They would bow down. They would pray to him, hoping that God would answer their prayer as he intercedes for them. And then the relics, meaning like his tooth or his bones or whatever fabric they might have that belonged to him, they would have those things, and they feel like that would connect them to that saint. Okay, so just know that a shrine is a place that's holy. You go to pray and worship. Okay, and they got a shrine to Saint Nick. And it just as this documentary said, when he reached the canonization status, that's when this legend took off. So when people are saying this is Christian origin, bro, listen, this man, if he really lived, I can't verify the man really lived. I didn't live back then, and I ain't got his bones, okay? But assuming that he actually did live, okay? This man that your Santa Claus is built upon, that everybody want to keep referencing, the church has taken this man and turned him into a canonized, venerated, worshipped, prayed to intercessor for them. He reached idol status, okay? And only after that, his legend took off. So you got shaky grounds here.
But the Muslim inhabitants of Demre are today proud to be associated with a Christian hero and hold a celebration on St. Nicholas's Day. what Nicholas had made of it all. Restaurants and gift shops take full advantage of their world-famous inhabitants.
Bizim ve dünya için çok önemli.
Father Christmas is very important for us and for the world.
Noel Baba bizim
We are
ülkemizde
very
olduğu
lucky
için
and happy that he is in our
şanslıyız.
country. In fact, he is a holy man
Bütün
for the
dünya
whole
için o
world.
kutsaldır.
Why is everyone spiraling over YouTube banning ad blockers? Like,
Today, the old reverential statue of St. Nicholas has been sidelined, replaced by a glowing universal plastic Western Santa. How a Catholic saint was transformed into a favorite children's character is a journey that spans several continents and fuses many religions. The Romans still ruled in Nicholas's time, and the emerging Christianity gained converts by blending with existing religions.
So this is important. This is what we talked about yesterday about syncretism. All right. And what some apologists act like never existed or don't exist now. But just as this mentioned, Rome ruled. Christianity was a persecuted faith. And around the 3rd, 4th centuries when they gained their freedom to publicly freely worship Christ. But they would assimilate, or no, I won't even say assimilate. That means to go into and blend in, but with them. But they would assume to themselves, or syncretism, or adopt certain pagan customs around them, okay, during this time, especially during the Christianization period. And we read that letter from Pope Gregory I yesterday to show you that this was indeed happening. All right.
Pope Gregory I in particular put a great emphasis on the notion that if the people we are Christianizing have got their own traditions, destroy their altars, destroy their idols, replace them with Christian altars and Christian preaching.
That's what we read yesterday when they took the idols temple, took out the images out of it and replaced it with relics and canonized saint statues, but allowed the people to continue the animal sacrifice and meet at their idols temple. They just turned the temple into a church. Okay.
The most famous such celebration was the Roman Saturnalia, a feast commemorating the dedication of the temple of the god Saturn, the god of agriculture and harvest, in mid-December.
It was a time when the world was turned upside down, you might say, when the slaves, and there were an enormous number of slaves in Rome, were given their freedom, and when their masters waited on the slaves, and the slaves dressed up in their masters' clothes, it sometimes became a little overexciting. And when we use the word Saturnalia today, we generally refer to a rather overblown celebration full of misrule and misbehavior.
As we proclaim Saturn, father of great Jupiter, with a gentle shout of Yo Saturnalia. When you hear this, you must bellow like oxen upon the fields. Yo Saturnalia. I'm pretty sure even you Britons can manage that. Yo Saturnalia! Yo Saturnalia!
Being held around the shortest day, light was an important feature of the pageantry.
Look! A monkey dance!
As well as the giving of gifts. Gifts were believed to secure a rich harvest in the coming year.
It is customary to give out gifts to the population. And we, your protectorate, are happy to accept any gifts you want to give us.
Long after the Romans, Saturnalia persisted as part of the midwinter celebrations in Europe.
We know that in the great castles of the nobles of the Middle Ages, that you had lords of misrule and jesters jolly-hoiting about the place, and overeating and overdrinking. And whether that was a celebration in honor of the Christ child, or was it a kind of folk memory of the Saturnalia, is a moot point.
People behaved so badly that when the Puritans came to power, they actually banned Christmas. There's nothing in the Bible about celebrating the Nativity. There's not even a clue about at what time of year it took place.
The decision to assign Christ's birthday to the 25th of December, the winter solstice on the Julian calendar, was inevitably going to be a compromise. Even so, over the centuries, St. Nicholas's popularity grew no more so than in the Netherlands. Every year, on a Sunday morning in mid-November, the quiet streets of Amsterdam are invaded by hundreds and thousands of people. They are all eagerly awaiting the arrival of a very special guest.
St. Nicholas and his servants, we call them Black Peters, are arriving from Spain in a steamer in the harbor of a big city. In the 17th century, they started to call him Sinterklaas. In English, Saint Sir Klaas. And when you pronounce it fast, then you can Sinterklaas. The Netherlands were a Roman Catholic country. But in the 16th century, we have the Reformation. And then all the Roman Catholic things were forbidden. And the feast was forbidden too. And
all right, so this is a very important piece of everything. So after when the Protestant Reformation took place, all right, and he says that the saints were basically banished, all right, and not that you can banish the actual person Mary or anything like that. She's dead, right? And Lord's will with the Lord, but in terms of the veneration and canonization and the worship and feast days done unto them and those things, the Protestant Reformation said no more of that. We ain't going to do that. That's idolatry and all that kind of stuff. That's why most Protestant churches don't be like praying to Mary and don't got no statues and relics and all this other crazy stuff. They got their own stuff they done got going on, but that part they broke off from. Okay, for the most part. And so, but this is very important because that would mean for someone like Saint Nick, okay, that he would have been one of those banished people that once the Reformation took place, which was supposed to be getting the church back to the way that it's, was supposed to be prior to the perversions that took place through the Roman Catholic Church and those other traditions, that by banishing the worship of the saints, that will also get rid of the feast, as it just said. Okay. And it would show and all that veneration, canonization, and embellishes stories and things like that, and believing they advocate for you in heaven stuff, all that goes away in the Reformation. And if that was to go away in the Reformation, that will also mean those embellished legends about Saint Nick that led to Santa Claus, that those things were supposed to have gone away as well. That's why you had those from the Protestant stop banned Christmas altogether. And you actually get in trouble and fined if they caught you celebrating it. All right. So it literally got banished. So if it stayed banished, okay, then this about the origins of Santa Claus, all that Santa's business wouldn't have been a thing. All right. Not to the way it is now, because even though it was banished at one point by the forefathers of the Protestant Reformation, nevertheless, you got many Protestants today, like about to happen next week, that are still participating in Christmas with Santa Claus and all this other stuff. All right. And remember, the Santa Claus is based upon the Saint Nick Catholic canonized worshiped saint. Okay. So everybody's still holding on to this stuff and doing this. All right. It's joining themselves back to its origin that they want to say it's Christian origin, but it's Catholic canonized venerated saint origin. Okay. They're saying this and done in honor of Jesus. Okay. But on Jesus' birthday, supposedly, there's a figure that's given presents. All right. And that figure that's given presents and knowing if everybody nice and stuff like that is a canonized, venerated Catholic saint. Okay. And everything else Roman Catholic is stamped to that feast day, meaning Christmas. So you got the Roman Catholic canonized, venerated, worshiped saint, Saint Nick, who is Santa Claus. who's giving everybody gifts and all the embellished legends of him giving presents and stockings and stuff. You got him going on, but this is supposed to be for Jesus Christ's birthday. Then you got the adoption of rituals that, you know, like Centennial and things like that we're doing already. All right. People want to argue about the date. Well, Centennial said to be from the 17th to the 23rd and not on the 25th. And so the apologists are trying to make those arguments saying that, you know, so that means that they didn't choose the date because of Saturnalia, because Saturnalia wasn't on the 25th. Okay. But that doesn't mean that they didn't choose that. That didn't mean they didn't put it where they put it at. And it had no relation to Saturnalia or what they plan to do with Saturnalia, which in this case, since they're trying to Christianize the empire, they need to do something with Saturnalia. So they're not just going, when the nation's so used to this 4, 5, 6 day feast of festivities and stuff like that, that all of a sudden the Christians come to power and then they're just going to exit out altogether and nobody got nothing. No, they take some of these customs, put it inside of their Christmas so that the people still have some kind of outward solemnity, as Pope Gregory would put it, to make it easier to convert them. All right. And we already talked about the date. The date was chosen based on Jewish myths. So you got Santa Claus based on Roman Catholic idolatry. Then you got the date of December 25th chosen based on Talmudic traditional teachings about a prophet dying on the day he was born. So far, none of these things are pure in origin, true in origin, verifiable in origin. These things have shaky grounds, and people just going by this. And now it's taking over the world. It ain't Jesus' birthday. Santa Claus is a venerated idol of the Roman Catholic Church. The date is chosen based off of Talmudic Jewish myths. So what is it that's true about Christmas? They might use truths about Christ and say that's why they're doing Christmas. But what is true about Christmas? What's true about the date? What's true about Santa Claus? What's true about any of it? All of it is lies and myths. And you're lying to your kids and look at these people on the screen. Black face, black people. Oh, yeah, y'all don't like that too much. So this is what's going on. Now, in America, y'all got the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. Y'all got the Coca-Cola Santa Claus. But in some of these other regions, their Santa Claus still look like a Roman Pope. All right? Walk around with that shepherd staff. So this whole thing is built upon myths, legends, and idols so far. All right? But it's said to be about Jesus. It's a lie. It's using the Lord himself. And in order for all of this to be established, they had to change the church's mindset regarding birthdays. Because if the church stayed in the mindset of it's pagan, it's idolatry, and we're not going to do this because it goes against God's commandment, then it would never allow for any saint to have a feast day for himself. So you got to understand the roots of all of this. You have to change the mindset of the believers regarding birthdays and the horoscopes and all the other stuff. Okay, you got to change their mindset, because if their minds stay the same, then we'll look like how the church did in Acts 2, where you got these saints that are, you know, Apostle Paul and Peter and all the other saints that believe, even if they're not an apostle or a bishop, and none of them got feast days for themselves, no matter their status in the church, and none of them are being prayed to advocate for your prayers and all this other stuff in heaven to get to God. So this is a totally different church that's being dealt with right here, and this is the church of the beast that's mentioned about in Revelation. That beast that changes times and laws. All right.
The children in Amsterdam and other places, they were going on the street. They make big noises and we want the feast, we want the feast. And then there was a big excitement in the city from, oh, that's not good, there's rumors, and that's bad for the merchantry and the traffic, the money, the Dutchmen like the money. And then there's a compromise. They said, okay, the St. Nicholas feast are still forbidden in the street, but inside, in the houses, it's not forbidden.
for these commercials, but y'all can see the compromise that's going on here. All right, they banned it because it was wicked, but then the people, the crowd, still wanted it, and so it was going to cause civil unrest, and so they compromised and said, all right. You can do it in your homes, but you can't do it outside. See this compromise? This is why when you depart from the commandment of Christ and do what you want to do, you fall into many traps that are hard to get out of. And you couldn't just sever it off, because now you're not allowed you're not allowed the nation or the community to be practicing this already. And you know how people are about their traditions. They're zealous. And if you just try to cold cut it because you're trying to repent or whatever the case is, many of the people are going to be mad and upset, and they'll cause civil unrest and cause problems for the government leaders. So, or the church leaders. And so therefore, then they, out of pressure, like Aaron did in the wilderness, they give in and compromise. And that's the problem. All this compromisation. And these are what your apologists out here today is trying to defend.
On the eve of St. Nicholas's Day, letters with the children's wishes are placed in shoes by the fireplace. Some much appreciated refreshments are placed there too.
Yeah.
Mama, can I have 2 apples and 2 carrots for Sinterklaas?
Dankjewel. Als Sinterklaas cadeautjes heeft gemaakt.
If Sinterklaas himself brings the presents, then he will arrive after midnight to make sure everyone is in bed. That's when he brings the presents. The apples and the carrot and the water are for his horse.
May the Lord keep y'all safe from things like this. So, children, the American version of this is when they leave out milk and cookies for Santa Claus. Believing he'll come eat it, and they leave him a gift, and then he'll, be happy and stuff like that, and then he'll leave them presents. Over in the Eastern world, where they don't have the American Coca-Cola Santa, their Santa Claus still looks like a Roman bishop pope. Okay, that's supposed to be Saint Nicholas. On the eve of his feast, the kids are leaving out gifts for him. This is your Eastern world version in some parts of the world, and they're leaving out 2 carrots for his horse and an apple for Saint Nicholas. And so, and they're taught to believe that this Catholic saint is the one that's coming to give them presents. Okay.
Sinterklaas kapoentje, gooi wat in mijn schoentje, gooi wat in mijn laarsje. Dank u Sinterklaasje. 'S'avonds komt de stoomboot uit Spanje weer aan. We zingen liedjes.
We sing these songs because if Black Peter hears us, he knows that we are good children.
Hoe huppelt zijn paardje, het dek op en neer. O, draaien de wippels al heen en alweer. Zij krijgt staat te lachen.
The children believe that St. Nicholas is riding on the rooftops listening to their songs. Originally, he rode alone and was both the bringer of presents and the punisher. But then a book of illustrated poems by an Amsterdam teacher gave the role of punisher to Black Peter.
When they were very naughty, St. Nicholas said to Black Peter, you get the naughty ones and put them in your sack. And when the party was over, then they believed that the naughty ones were taken back to Spain. And then after a year, they're coming back, and they are very good and very obedient and very hardworking children. But in the other countries, in Austria and Switzerland and Hungary, St. Nicholas was accompanied with very terrifying persons. There were blackamoors, there were herring monsters, and even devils. To frighten the naughty children as an example for the good ones.
Heel graag een PlayStation.
Please, may I have a PlayStation?
Een Lego-trein.
A Lego train
Allemaal bestuur.
with all kinds of wheels.
Een trein. En er zit
And
allemaal
trains
heel
and
fijn.
tracks.
Dat vind ik
That would be
allemaal
very
best wel
nice.
leuk. En als dat is gebeurd, dan komt er pakjesavond, 5 december.
And when the night itself comes, the 5th of December, we have to wait until after we have eaten as a family.
En als ze dan klopt er.
And then Black Peter knocks on the door. Last year, Black Peter actually came in.
En als hij heeft
After he has knocked the door, there will be a sack in front of the door with presents, and Papa will share out the presents. We are not allowed. Only Papa can do this.
Nee, papa doet het.
Wat zit hij, jongen? Als kan je het niet zien. Oh.
Oeh, ik... Wat is leuk.
Oh, even kijken hoor. Van wie zal deze zijn? Wauw. Voor Roos.
Oh, voor Roos, hè? Papa,
Even zitten.
maak hem maar open.
Ja.
Express. Wauw, de Banana Express. Dank u wel, Sinterklaas.
Oké.
Many of the customs surrounding the Christian Sinterklaas are vestiges of an older pre-Christian religion. Taking up on naughty children, riding a white horse, and children leaving food out at night can all be traced back to the Norse god Odin. He too had a long white beard and spent the year in distant land, in his case Valhalla.
Now, who is Odin? That's the father of Thor and Loki from the Thor movie. So when y'all hear me keep talking about Thor all the time, Odin is his father. Okay, and so all this goes back to ancient Nordic mythology. And so what this document is showing you is that based upon the veneration canonized saint, that's already an issue, shrine, people worshiping and stuff, Saint Nick, all the things that you've come to know as Santa Claus is built upon that particular venerated saint, and then an amalgamation or a mixture of other tales from other mythologies from other nations. This is why across the world, Christmas and Santa Claus is such a popular thing. All right, it's a mixture of everything in it. Okay, so those who say it's Christian in origin, the only truth about that is that the legend that became the Santa Claus began with this canonized venerated worship saint, which is already a problem already in the church. So though they want to say it's Christian in origin, it's from the sinners in the Christian church. Okay, not the godly, the sinners. So it's sinful or demonic in origin. The sinners began this problem. Okay, through the embellished stories and idolatry and worshiping and praying to saints. That's the legend of Santa Claus. Take off from there, and then over time it just mixed with all this other religious stuff from idol worship and all this other stuff. Okay, that's what all this is. So though it might have started inside of the church from a person that's considered a Christian, these people were led astray by demons. You understand that? So it is indeed pagan in origin, because the pagans are led astray by demons, and the people that started this veneration stuff was led astray by demons too. So it is indeed pagan in origin. Don't let these guys who can speak a little bit better than me and hang their hats on their researches all the time. Don't let them woo you through their much information and talking. It most likely's the saint that they keep referencing. Looking at that saint. All right.
On the eve of the winter solstice, he would come back to Earth and seek out evildoers. Odin would lead the hunt on his great white horse, carrying off naughty children in a howl of wind. Our journey now crosses the Atlantic. And today, Manhattan is probably the epitome of the commercial exploitation of the holiday season. But it also had a vital role to play in evolving St. Nicholas into a character that has become recognized all over the world.
New York has the legitimate right to lay claim to the invention of the American Santa Claus.
This is your brain when you're struggling to focus.
Originally, New York was known as New Amsterdam, and many Dutch immigrants settled here, bringing with them many European customs and traditions.
There's a long-standing legend, one of many St. Nicholas legends, that St. Nicholas came to America through the Dutch. And of course, it's true that the Dutch settled in New Amsterdam, now New York City, back in the early 17th century. But there seems to be no evidence that they actually brought St. Nicholas rituals with them. St. Nicholas was reinvented as Santa Claus in New York early in the 19th century by a group of patrician gentlemen who were not Dutch in the least. They were all of British stock, but they loved to identify with the Dutch. They were looking for a set of legends that they could associate with New York as it used to be, and that is to say, with America as it used to be.
One New York resident who wrote about the changing times was Dietrich Knickerbocker, the alias used by the great American writer Washington Irving when he wrote The Knickerbocker History of New York. It was a book that romanticized the good old days and included a reference to the Dutch tradition of celebrating St. Nicholas.
That got picked up by Clement Clark Moore. He was an extremely wealthy man. He lived on a country estate in an area that extended in modern terms from about 18th Street up to about 24th Street, the Chelsea district of Manhattan. Clement Moore found that his estate was being cut up by a new street system. The New York City Council took it by what's called eminent domain. Moore reacted to this by writing a tract attacking the rampant, uncontrolled urban development of New York, saying it meant that the mob was going to take over the city. And then I guess he turned to the same Dutch legends that Washington Irving had introduced just a few years earlier. And he wrote a poem, The Night Before Christmas, or as he called it, A Visit from St. Nicholas, in which he really put St. Nicholas on the map.
'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse.
Someone told me this is the only poem that all American children memorize voluntarily.
The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there.
This is the poem that transformed St. Nicholas into Santa Claus.
When what to my wondering eyes should appear but a miniature sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. With a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick.
St. Nicholas lost his bishop's outfit. He lost his bishop's authority. He just became an elfin, jolly character who came not to judge, just to leave gifts.
As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot.
There's no threats of punishment. There's no fear.
His eyes, how they twinkled. His dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard on his chin was as white as the snow.
There's no dignified magisterial figure. There's just a jolly old man who comes and brings Christmas gifts. Clement Moore wrote The Night Before Christmas in 1822. It got published in a rather obscure newspaper, and over the following decade, it just swept America.
But I heard him exclaim ere he drove out of sight,
Happy Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.
By 1840, virtually all Americans knew about Santa Claus, who was really the gift of Clement Moore. And it was that poem and that new ritual that brought about the modern Christmas that we know, and who brought about the Santa Claus that's still with us today.
Pwy sy'n dŵad dros y bryn yn ddistaw bach?
Moore could never have predicted that the poem he read to his children on Christmas Eve would become so inspirational, leave such a profound legacy in so many languages, and have such a commercial impact.
Sean Corn. Hello. Tyr dyma, tyr diwar.
Very good.
Moore's poem inspired a Philadelphia merchant, J.W. Parkinson, in 1841 to hire an actor friend to dress up in fur and drop down a chimney outside his shop. Santa's appearance and the color of his suit were still open to interpretation.
So far, you can see how one legend can lead to another legend, and how these cultural traditions morph over time. So originally, you saw in the Eastern world. So let's start here. First, the story about how Saint Nick, the man, threw the coins through a window or down a chimney and landed in some stockings. All right. And why was he throwing it? Because he was walking around in the vicinity and overheard somebody praying, and then ran and got his bag or something and came back and threw it through the window, whatever. So he overhears them giving some money. Then in the other regions that, worship him and venerate him, on the eve of or before, his feast day, the little kids left out the little apple for him and the 2 carrots for his horse that he's supposed to ride upon, because at one point there was no reindeers in the Santa Claus story. It was him, he was on a horse. And you saw that the little kids was writing letters to the Catholic saint, which is imitating how that daddy in the legend of Saint Nick, how the daddy was praying out loud what he needed to God, and then Saint Nick overheard him, and then Saint Nick came and gave him the money. All right. Now you got these little kids writing letters to Saint Nick, all right, believing he's on their rooftop on his horse, listening to them, all right, and then he's going to give them the presents they asked for. Okay. Then now you got on the Western world, all right, American stuff, the little kids right here on the screen going to the mall where Saint Nick is at, or Santa Claus, sit on his lap, tell him, look up at him and tell him everything they want, and then he's supposed to hear it. Remember all them little kids. He's supposed to have unlimited memory and remember everything that all the little kids ever tell him. And then he said, ho, 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 ho. And then he's supposed to be bringing them the gifts they asked for. All right. So just as in the Roman Catholic Church, he's reached a God status by having shrines dedicated to him and relics and him being prayed to answer your prayers. He's reached God status. All right. Maybe not the highest God status, but he's reaching God status in the church that led to all the legends that's built upon him. And now you got this character based upon him that's got God attributes. Hearing everything, don't forget what you want. Know if you're naughty or nice, come tuck you in bed at night. All this other stuff that's going on, even in our modern day, built upon the legends of a man that has supposed to have lived, that have been venerated by the Roman Catholic Church. So once again, when y'all hear all these smarty pants apologists out here defending their traditions and not the faith, but defending defending their traditions, and they want to keep telling you Christmas ain't pagan in origin, it's Christian in origin. When you examine the Saint Nick person that they brought up, that they want to bring up, to show you the roots of Santa ain't pagan, that saint guy has a shrine, churches built towards dedicated to him, people praying to him because they think he can answer their prayers. And now you wonder why Santa Claus has that kind of attributes, overhearing you, knowing if you're good or bad, and bringing you all your presents you asked for. So it is built upon a Saint Nick, but that Saint Nick is a man, if he did live, is a man that the church sinned by venerating and worshiping. So it's pagan in origin. All right. So, but you see here in America how this legend that started in the Roman Catholic Church, okay, has spread throughout the entire world. And then this admixture of Nordic Odin gods and all this other stuff is in this guy here, all right, that you're looking at on the screen. And they're trying to lure you to sleep. Ain't a big problem. It's Jesus' birthday. We just need to put make sure Christ is at the center of Christmas. Christ ain't at the center of Christmas. The date. Christ ain't the center of the date. Talmudic Jewish tradition is the reason for December 25th. Okay? And it's just said to be the date chosen to be the day of the worship of Jesus Christ's birthday, which first had to change the church mind regarding birthdays in general. So the deception had to take place just to get to that point. Then after you choose the date, you got to do something with Saturnalia that you're trying to get rid of, being that now that Christianity is now the state, the government positioned religion. And now you're assimilating and taking customs from them. And that's why y'all look so similar. All right. Now you got the Saint Nick guy you done venerated. Now you got legends and embellished stories of him floating around. Now all of a sudden he riding on a horse, overhearing everybody's prayers, giving everybody presents, coming to tuck kids in that night. And if they act bad, he got a Black Pete guy that's going to punish them. And now you got Santa on an elf. The horse done morphing. Horses done morphing to reindeer, flying deers, and stuff like that. So all this is myth, legend, superstition, and idolatry. And this is what I'm warning you, brothers, this about. Don't get carried away with the festivities and what you're looking at. All right. All this stuff is built upon evil itself.
Parkinson based his figure on an image published in a New York newspaper that year. The first exclusive book with illustrations by T.C. Boyd was published in 1848. Boyd's Santa is so small that he stands on a chair to fill the children's stockings. And then a German immigrant, Thomas Nass, created a visual image that would later become widely accepted.
It started out in 1863 when he was working for Harper's Weekly, and he drew his first Santa Claus almost as a political figure, dressed in his fur suit, but it had the stars and stripes in support of the Union Army of the North. From the political images, actually, his most famous Santa Claus that he drew was Merry Old Santa Claus. Instead of having Santa's sack full of toys on his back, the sack was actually a Civil War backpack. There was a pocket watch which showed midnight, which was when Congress had to vote to give the military their pay. Also, there was a toy Trojan horse showing some of the deceit that may have been occurring in the government.
Ness images of Santa Claus started out with a brown fur suit that eventually evolved into a red suit. The McLaughlin children's books were not terribly careful with their color, and something that was intended to be published as a brown suit often looks reddish, and so it was a logical progression to let it evolve into a red suit. There wasn't any particular symbolism to that.
Nast really modeled Santa Claus off his own self-image. Nast himself was a shorter, stockier man, had a large handlebar mustache and beard.
He often included his children and scenes from the inside of his house in his Christmas drawings. We can see the fireplaces of Villa Fontana, his home in Morristown, showing up in many of the Christmas drawings. Nast introduced the image of Santa Claus leaning over a huge ledger with columns of good boys and girls and naughty boys and girls. These images also appeared in double-page Harper's Weekly illustrations that also included Santa Claus at the North Pole, peering through a telescope, presumably to be watching to make sure that these were good boys and girls and not naughty boys and girls. Prior to this, no one thought about where Santa lived, but so many people were fascinated with the information they were hearing for the first time about the North Pole that became the place where Santa came from.
I want to bring something up. This is how, like the Roman mythologies and the Greek mythologies and the Egyptian mythology, this is how all those things that are built upon lies, this is how it all begins. So notice how they got, this guy, he's trying to figure out what the guy would even look like, right? To draw images. This would be like how the heathens would, in their minds, imagine however the Lord would look. And then they'll go to the trees and their little artists would go and start carving out images, all right, to represent this God that they're imagining. But then as they continue to, first they got the images, that's the first thing. Then as there's stories that got to develop, right? They don't have the full fleshed out story right away. Okay. So they got the image, they don't imagine that. Now they got a couple of elements of the story, but you see how, just like with the Santa Claus thing, people is like so fascinated with what they're hearing, it's blowing their mind, and now all of a sudden they're like, where does he live? But if you already know this is a fake story and this guy don't actually exist, and it's just, you just like a Harry Potter book, all of a sudden you want to know more information about this fake person. Where's he live? He's watching us, but where does he live? And this shows how fast humans get led away by demons and their fanciful stories that are not built upon Christ and the truth. And the people get carried away and they start making images where they think the person supposed to look like this artist guy. All the idol images were made by artists, painters, carvers, molders. The artists, they're the ones who made every idol that's ever existed. When it comes to the stories and the legends, non-artists, people who love fanciful story, got good old imaginations and good with words, they start making these tales. Then the people that's listening, they're like, ooh, like the Thor films and things like that. It's part 3, part 4, part 5. The screenplay writers sit around and they sit at the little table and come up with ideas of what the storyline will be. And then everybody get interested in the storyline, even though it be lies and myths and legends. But they so interested, they want to be entertained. And so you're watching how these things develop. And how does Santa Claus even get to this point? The legends of St. Nicholas. All right. Since they want to make it Christian origin, we're going to keep emphasizing this. All right. It indeed came out the church, the Beast Church. Okay.
Another thing that Nast helped to develop was using the U.S. Postal Service as a way for children to communicate with Santa, to send their lists of what they wanted for Christmas.
Nast wasn't the first person to illustrate Clement Moore's poem, The Night Before Christmas, but Moore describes Santa Claus and the reindeer and the sleigh and landing on the rooftop and flying off afterwards into the midnight sky. So these were descriptions that Nast used in his early illustrations. He just didn't stay with them. Nast made Santa Claus grow from an elf who could easily slip down a chimney to a full-grown adult male.
Do you want to become a software engineer?
I don't, but if you do, pretty cool career field.
Nuremberg in Germany, and its spectacular lantern parade. Every year, thousands flock to this city to experience the Christmas market. They have been flocking here for many centuries. Originally known as Nikolausdot, today it is known as Christkindlmarket. The old Saint Nick has not always had a warm welcome here. In the 16th century, Martin Luther's Reformation brought about the anti-Catholic movement in Germany. As Protestants could not have saints, a new Christmas tradition was needed, so the baby Jesus became the bringer of gifts.
Der heilige Christ ist entweder
It's getting interesting. Okay. So this is what we was talking about earlier. When the Protestant Reformation took place and the anti-Catholic movement started, they banished the worship of veneration and all the stuff of saints. So that would get rid of their feast days and all these other things. So like Santa Claus at that time, which wasn't the Santa Claus you know now, but the Santa Claus back then, they banished all that stuff. All right. Because it was Roman Catholic, it was idolatry, it was connected back to veneration of the saints and all these other things that I'm telling you about right now. All right. But as the information shows you is that during that time with Martin Luther, they got rid of some elements, but not everything. Okay. So you still see this compromise attitude that's still going on. Vehemently against some things, not so vehemently against other things that you should be vehemently about. So let's get rid of all this other stuff, but we want the festival to keep going. Somebody else got to be bringing presents. So who's gonna bring presents? Oh, the person that this whole feast was supposed to be about from the beginning. He's the one that's going to be bringing presents now. All right. Well, let's keep listening because it's the same man, Martin Luther, where some of them will say this is where the Christmas tree custom came from. All right. But I think it's going to go into that Christmas tree thing. But look at how it came in.
The Holy Christ is actually only a baby, so it made no sense that he could bring the presents. Neither did it make sense for a stronger young man, because that would not fit in with the story of Christmas. Therefore, the Holy Christ evolved into a female fairy-like figure.
By the 1900s, the Nuremberg Christkind wore a golden pleated robe based on the Nuremberg golden angel. In other German towns and cities, the Christkind wears white and a starry wreath. It's a great honor for any girl to be chosen to be the Christkind. The contents of the letters and drawings are just like those by children anywhere. But in many parts of Germany, Austria, the Czech Republic, and Switzerland, the recipient is the Christkind.
Ich stell's mir so vor.
I imagine her to have long curly hair and a long dress and a big crown.
I also think she would have a crown and a golden robe and golden curly hair.
And a golden book.
See, these kids, they really believe she exists. And they're using their imagination to say what she looked like. This is how all idolatry came into the world. Believing there were some other gods. You don't really know much about him, so you're using your imagination to imagine what he's like. And that's what leads people to idolatry. They start making these statues and these images. Okay. Now, y'all don't got the Christian here in America, in America's version of Christmas. Okay. But this Christian person exists in other parts of the world. All right. This little female lady, similar to how in America, y'all might hear people when they talk about wisdom and proverbs, you got those that are of the women movement, and you hear them saying stuff like Sophia. Oh, in Proverbs, when we're talking about wisdom, it was there the whole time. Sophia. And they start saying Sophia. All right. And that's supposed to be who wisdom is. So it's supposed to have been God in the beginning when everything's created. It's supposed to have been God the Father and Sophia creating everything. All right. So you hear them saying crazy stuff like this, but this would be like what that Christian girl is, because she's supposed to be the gift giver of Christmas, because they couldn't use a baby to bring presents because babies can't give you presents. That wouldn't fit. Couldn't be a young guy because it wouldn't fit the story that had been going on so far. Because remember, Santa Claus, the gift giver, is built upon an old man that the Catholic Church now worshiped. Okay. So it had to be an older person. But instead of finding even an older person, they shouldn't find anybody, so put all this in the trash. But instead of finding an older person, since they couldn't use a baby, and since they couldn't use a young guy because he didn't fit the description of the story, they went and got a female. Okay? The Christian. All right. Now let's look at this.
Glöckchen, klingelingeling, kling, Glöckchen, kling. Lasst mich, weil ihr Kinder, ist so kalt der Winter. Lieber guter Nikolaus, bitte komm in unser Haus. Der Weg von Tannenwald ist bald und es ist kalt. Und weiter geht's nicht.
Super, toll hast du es gemacht. Das ist doch einen großen Applaus schon mal. Super.
The Christkind being entertained by a carol about St. Nicholas shows how the roles of the religious figures have merged. The Weihnachtsmann, or Father Christmas, also features in certain parts of Germany.
Today it is totally different. Today the Christkind comes mainly to the Catholic families. So in South and Southwest Germany, where Catholicism is quite widespread, Christkind is the present bringer. And in North Germany, in the evangelical areas, Father Christmas brings the presents. So this is a crossover development which is very interesting.
Just like Santa and Father Christmas, the Christkind also visits on Christmas Eve.
I think the Christkind brings the presents when we are all in church.
That's on the 24th of December, and when we come home, we aren't allowed into the living room. Then we are allowed in, and there is a decorated Christmas tree.
Check this out. I'm going to show you how I...
The Christmas tree is a gift that Germany gave to the rest of the world.
Oh, sehr schön. Und guck dir mal die vielen Geschenke an.
Today, Santa Claus can be seen alongside the Christkind even in the German Christkindl market in Nuremberg. It's ironic that a variation on the pronunciation of Christkind, Kris Kringle, has become another name for Santa Claus in certain parts of America. Barcelona Harbour on the 5th of January, and a large expectant crowd has gathered. Some special guests are expected.
Epiphany, it's in its origin a religious festivity, and with the celebrated introduction of Jesus Christ to the rest of the world. In Spain, we don't have Father Christmas. Traditionally, we have the three wise men that come during the night from the 5th to the 6th of January and give presents to the little children. The three wise men are Melchior, that represents Europe, Gaspar, who represents Asia, and Balthasar represents Africa. That were the three continents known at the time Jesus Christ was born. it is very difficult to track back the real origins of the tradition. In Spain, it's been like that all the time. And nowadays, we're very proud of having the three wise men in contrast to the Anglo-Saxon tradition of Santa Claus or Father Christmas. We feel that we are different with that. And of course, it's not only a tradition in Spain, it's a tradition in South America and in the old Spanish colonies all around the world. The kids have to write the letters and think about all the presents that they want to ask them for. And you have to throw your letters to the postal boxes. And of course, the kings are supposed to read all the letters of the kids during the night and prepare the presents for the following day.
So you see how even the wise men get thrown into this thing, all these legends built upon them. This whole big festival is going on for the three wise men. Come meet the three wise men. They're going to give you presents instead of Santa Claus. And all the little kids are writing letters to the three wise men who didn't even bring Jesus toys and asking these three wise men to give them presents, little toys they want. The actual three wise men didn't bring Christ no toys. The gifts they gave Christ, he couldn't even play with. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which are normally items you use for healing or smelling good. Okay? These are kingly gifts. These things, you can't play with them. A little baby Jesus got no use for frankincense, myrrh, and gold when he's 2 years old. Okay? But that's what they came to present to him because they were coming to see a king. Okay? And by the way, Brother Edwin, I did see your comment from the last class about the three wise men. I am looking to those things that you asked. But nevertheless, look at this. Legends are born. Now they brought Jesus Christ presents. They're going to bring you presents. Why they don't bring all the kids frankincense, myrrh, and gold what they brought Jesus? They ain't bring Jesus no baby toys, something suitable for his age. Instead, now for all the other kids that's asking him for stuff, and Christ, Jesus ain't asking them for nothing either. Jesus Christ ain't asking for no presents. But all these little kids writing letters to the three wise men about all the little toys and PS5s they want. And the three wise men are no longer bringing frankincense, myrrh, and gold. Now they're giving out PlayStations and horses. And one of them going to read every child's request in one night, and then they're going to get the gift somehow, because where they going to get the money from? And then they're going to bring it to the kids. All this is lies and little fairy tales that the parents keep on feeding into their kids. Then they're tiptoeing around, putting presents and saying, from the three wise men, from Santa Claus. And taking them to parades like this, where the little kids' imagination, remember age accountability? They're taking the little ignorant kids that can't discern between good and bad to these little parades and feeding this myths and stuff into them. They can't discern between good or bad. So if they can't discern between good and bad, they also can't discern between made up and true. For the smart pants people, apologists. Yeah, I got a problem with every Christian apologist that's defending this stuff. All of its most likelies. The inspired philosophies out there. Greater works, all of them that's defending this stuff. It's Christian in origin, ain't pagan. They'll never show you all this stuff, though. They read y'all some little articles that say, it ain't pagan, it most likely came from this. But they don't show you what's going on. I'm showing this a documentary where they take cameras in the various parts of the world, even in your modern days, and show you what in the world is going on around you. Because you can't see it in Brooklyn, okay? Or in Florida. Y'all too captivated by Santa Claus and take your kids to the mall. Look at all this other stuff going on here. 3 wise men bringing your kids the toys, and they're going to read their letter in one night and all this other bull crap. And you're taking your little ignorant kids that can't discern good from bad, true from fiction, and y'all take them there and let them believe these lies. Because it entertains them, and the kids is looking forward to it, and you like to see the smiles on their faces. The Lord hates every lie. Every lie the Lord hates. Whatever's not built upon truth, the Lord hates it vehemently. Every canonized saint that the church worships and prays to, God hates the person that's down there praying and kissing statues, thinking that these people is answering the prayers. The actual saint person might actually be in heaven because they lived holy lives, but the people down there kissing statues who decided to canonize them after the fact and make them objects of worship and build shrines to them, they're in sin. But they've allowed corrupt leaders change their minds about things that never was practiced during the Lord's time and his holy apostles' time. New things that came in later on. Now all of a sudden, the church got these relics and stuff, but the scripture said when Christ rose, one of the disciples that he loved looked in the tomb and saw the garment that was folded. What happened to that garment? Because none of the apostles said the man took it. And it said, and he took the garment and he went back to the brethren and he showed them, look, a garment, the garment that he had on. He has risen. They didn't do that. But yet, look, this saint died. They did miracles. They answered this prayer from heaven, and this miracle took place. Look, we have his necklace. We have his shoelace. We have this poem that he wrote back in the day, and the ink on it is from his beloved blessed hands. And they take the letter that got the ink, and they put the hand on the ink because they believe that if they pray with their hands on the ink, it's going to link them to that saint that's going to hear them in heaven and then answer their prayer. Whenever those saints become omnipresent, that a believer in Brazil could be praying to Mary while at the same time a saint in Florida could be praying to Mary, and then somewhere up North America, maybe in Washington, the state, praying to Mary at the same time, and Mary hear them all. When she become omnipresent, ears open to everybody. But this stuff been happening for so long, and so many other things are mixed into it. But it's obviously still evil. You can clearly see it. But nevertheless, this is stuff that people are defending and trying to tell y'all it ain't pagan in origin.
The three kings do not just visit Barcelona.
Hey, guys.
The kids have to write the letters and think about all the presents that they want to ask them for. And you have to throw your letters to the postal boxes. And of course the kings are supposed to read all the letters of the kids during the night and prepare the presents for the following day.
The three kings do not just visit Barcelona.
Alcoy is a bit special because in this town The idea of preparing a cavalcade in which you had a parade with the camels and the kings in person was first thought here and first realized in 1886. During the cavalcade, they normally give like 1,000 kilos of caramels and candies all around. Best thing is to receive the presents from the pages. What you have is like large ladders that are put against the balconies, and then you'll have the pages climbing around with big packets full of presents and toys. And then you'll see the little kids receiving with all the emotion these packages from the real kings and pages. Of course, if you're lucky enough, what you should do is to kiss a real king, and the pages will help you to climb to the camel, and you will have a kiss that will also bring you luck during the whole year. So, if you come to a koi and you see the cavalcade, it's impossible not to believe in the three wise men.
Dawn in Rome on the following morning, the 6th of January. These Italian children are very excited. Like all children, they are eagerly anticipating opening their presents. Their stockings are bulging. But here the gift giver is not Santa Claus, but a witch called Befana.
The Befana is a woman, an ugly old woman who looks like a witch, with a broom and a pointy black hat. She is dressed in old clothes. She has a big nose with a mole on it.
Legend has it that the three wise men approached an old woman asking for directions to where Christ was born. She didn't know, but provided them with shelter for a night. She declined their invitation to join them on the search. Later, however, she had a change of heart, but couldn't catch up with them. Instead, she gave the gifts she'd prepared for the baby Jesus to children she met along the way. Similar characters exist.
Oh, Lord. These legends. These things are so annoying, bro. They're so annoying. See, the notice scripture says that this is a firm foundation and is true. The Lord knows all those that are his. And everyone who belongs to the Lord must depart from evil. And the Lord has to know those that are his, and they got to turn from evil. Because when I'm looking at this type of stuff, when I'm looking at who Saint Nick was and what the church has done with him, when I see the legends of Santa Claus, the three wise men, and now all of a sudden there's this witch that they got directions from, but she like changed her mind during the trip and gave her gifts to some kids, and they're doing this on January 6th, which is one of them dates that these guys who's defending Christmas, January 6th is one of the dates that they want to bring up about the Epiphany or something like that. I forgot which feast it was. And then, all these things that's going on, the Black Peter, the Santa Claus, the Christian, all of those stuff that's going on. for this one birthday party of Jesus Christ, apparently. And all these legends and embellished stories and myths, it makes Christ, not in true sense, but in an outer sense, makes Christ like every other mythology or idol that is under the sun. And it takes the testimonies in the scriptures and that we got, and then calls these things into question in the minds of people because all these embellished legends surrounding them. In the scriptures, the wise men saw the star that led them to where the baby Jesus is supposed to be born at least the city, because they didn't lead them to the manger, but led them to like the direction they should go. So they went to Bethlehem, and then they went to Herod and said, "Where the boy child is? We came to meet him," thinking Herod would know. But Herod's like, I don't know. Go find him. They go ask some questions, and the scribes and them said, "Oh, it says that the Christ should be born in Bethlehem." So the Herod's like, "Go and find him. When you find him, come back and let me know. I want to go worship him." All the while, he wanted to kill him. And we already, when witnessing and telling, about Christ being born and things like that, you already got to deal with those who scoff already at the testimonies that we got in the canon Bible. But now when you put yourself in the situation where now, if you was to go to these regions and see these things that's going on surrounding Christmas and Jesus Christ's birth and the add-on legends to the wise men, now there's this witch lady and all this other stuff, that puts the Bible in an unattractive light. And this is what the apostles was talking about in the scripture. We're talking about the way that we lived our lives to make the gospel attractive. If nobody know what I'm talking about, give me a second. In Titus chapter 2, let me put up the big version. Titus chapter 2, Paul said this to Titus. I'm going to start at verse 9. He says, "Slaves must always obey their masters and do their best to please them. They must not talk back or steal, but must show themselves to be entirely trustworthy and good. Then they," talking about the slave, "will make the teaching about God and our Savior attractive in every way." So it wasn't just about, the apostle didn't have the mindset like some people have, and like they become in this comment section to be acting like. The apostles didn't have the mindset of, it's written in the Bible. They either believe it or don't. They got stony hearts. Like, they didn't have that kind of mindset regarding the gospel. Or it's written in the Bible. And if they just don't believe us, they just don't believe us. They was just not meant to be. Like, they didn't have that mindset. Instead, the mindset that the apostles had was, for the believer, be careful how you live your life and how you act. Because irregardless of the fact we got the Holy Scriptures, and we got the testimonies of Jesus Christ that they were saying orally, and then later on written down that we call the Gospels, it wasn't enough that was just written in the Bible. And you're either going to believe that or don't believe it. And it wasn't enough that the apostle was just out there preaching and telling people about the Lord. That wasn't just enough either. They also said, for those who already profess to believe this message that we preach, be careful of how you live and treat people. And in this context, he's talking about slaves that are subject to masters and how they act in obedience and servitude. Because the way that the Christian who professes to believe the message the apostles preached, the way that they act would either make the message that the apostles were preaching attractive or unattractive. So the way that believers act actually make the gospel appear beautiful or ugly. Or ugly. You, brothers and sisters, remember when the apostle said this in 1 Corinthians? Come on in there, hurry up. Remember when the apostle said this in 1 Corinthians? I mean, sorry, not first, second. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, remember when he said this? He said in verse 1, he said, are we beginning to praise ourselves again? Are we like others who need to bring you letters of recommendation, or who ask you to write such letters on their behalf? Surely not. The only letter of recommendation we need is you, yourselves. Your lives are a letter written in our hearts. Everyone can read it, meaning you, how you act, and recognize our good work among you. Clearly, you are a letter from Christ showing the result of our ministry among you. So what he's saying is that Jesus Christ commissioned them to preach. I'm going to use myself as an example because I'm the same. I'm not an apostle, but I am a pastor. And I've been called by the Lord to continue the message. All right. Now, Jesus Christ chose me to continue the message. All right. Just as he chose the apostles to take the message out. And he said that the believer and how they act, their lives is like Jesus Christ writing a letter, a recommendation regarding the apostle that was doing the work among these believers, whether he's doing a good job or not. Because Jesus Christ ain't come down in the body and say, you're doing a good job. He didn't do that. Instead, the apostles told the believers, we don't need a letter of recommendation like the others do. You are our letter, and Christ is the one who write it. So you are a letter from Christ to the minister that's ministering to you. So the way that you are taking in the teachings and that your life is changing is as if Christ is writing a letter to me about the good job that I'm doing. Or if the community is corrupt and I allow y'all to go fight and be part of paganism and all these other things, and I just allow it to go, and now the church community is corrupt, that's a letter of disapproval from Christ. So the apostle said, this letter is written not with pen and ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. So as they preach the gospel to these people, and then they actually believe and receive the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is working in their lives and making them more and more holy, the Holy Spirit is writing a letter to the ministers that's sowing among them the seeds that they're doing a good job. So if that's the case here, as the apostle said, and now we go back to Titus, and he says, slaves, you believers, tell them, Titus, you teach them this, that slaves must always obey their masters and do their best to please them. They must not talk back to steal, but must show themselves to be entirely trustworthy and good. Then, if you teach them this and they do it, then they will make the teaching about God and our Savior, Jesus Christ, attractive in every way, or else they will make the message ugly. And there'll be a stumbling block from people coming to salvation. So now when we go back to this is what's happening. They're making the gospel ugly. A false Jesus Christ, some witch lady that's supposed to have came with the wise men. Now the wise men is reading all your letters in one night and bringing all the kids toys, something they ain't never did with Jesus. Now you got a Santa Claus. Now you got a Christian. Now you got the Black Peter guy. Now you got all this stuff built upon a venerated, worshipped, shrined Catholic saint. And now all these guys trying to tell y'all today, with all their intellect, it ain't pagan in origin. These same men can't come out to stadiums. They can't put their hands down in a ring. They love Thor. It's on their back walls. They go to Comic-Con dressed up. But these same ones trying to tell y'all these things ain't paganism. They're pagans themselves by the way they live. But this type of stuff right here, you know, when somebody sees this, they go, Christianity is no different than Buddhism, no different than Islam, no different than Hinduism or any other little false thing. All these embellished legends and stories. Some fat man flying around. Some witch lady bringing gifts to toys. Some Christian lady hearing everything and bringing you toys. St. Claus over there. St. Nick shrine. Relics and all this other stuff. He got a feast day. All this surrounding Jesus Christ's birthday. And then many people go, this is a fairy tale. Yeah, these stories are fairy tale, but they use the things in the scriptures to create these embellished fairy tales. So now it just sheds a negative light on the Bible itself. And then them not being careful how they live their lives makes the gospel that we believe unattractive, makes it ugly. They're ugly makeup on the face of Christ. If I can use that illustration. Christ got natural beauty. He got natural beauty. But now he's going out. And so he want to make that beauty even more accentuated. So he got you out there. He's already light. But then he made you light rays and send you out in the earth. But if he's light, but then he send you out there, but you're darkness. You're like that black mascara stuff that be draining down women's faces when they be crying and stuff and all their makeup falling off. That's what it's like. You're not accentuating the beauty of Christ. You're making him appear ugly. All for the sake of your traditions. But it's all supposed to be done in honor of him. Where you at so far? Nowhere to be found. And that's why y'all got to always be picking through Christmas every year. We don't do that part. We don't do that part. We got to put the Jesus back in Christmas. No, you ain't got to put him back in it. He was never in it. The date wasn't because of him. It was because of rabbinical Talmudic Jews that you picked December 25th. And it's strange belief that prophets died on the day they were born. That's why you got December 25th. Then all the traditions that added in got no relation to Jesus Christ. The tree ain't got no relation to Christ. Lights ain't got nothing to do with Jesus Christ. But y'all picked them symbols as y'all nitpicked Saturnalia and them other things going on in Rome so they can make it easy to convert these people. And you say that wasn't the case, but we got evidence of Christian syncretisms and Christianizations borrowing from them nations to make conversion easier. And y'all doing it today with Christian yoga and Christian fighting. You're doing it today. Christian MMA fighters, Christian WWE superstars. And I can honor it going, it's Romans 14 issue. And you making the gospel of Christ ugly because you might create converts, but they're all hypocrites like you. Just like before I got on here. Y'all see this, let me put it on the screen. Let me find it right quick. Just like before I got on here. Like literally right before I got on here. I got a message on Facebook in that back chat. All right. Well, Leo asked me a question. All right. And some of y'all know him as Spooky, I forgot, Spooky Apologetics or something like that. He asked me a question. All right. He posted the flyer. All right. In there. Okay. And said, that thumbnail you have for your next live, this one right here, could someone consider that acting? As I know you aren't literally looking at that Santa in your office, right? I'm gonna read that again. This is a thumbnail poster for the class that's called The Corrupt Church, which is symbolized by the St. Nick guy over here that they done canonized, and Santa, in which I got over here. So I put those two images there. Number two, I ain't even looking at Santa. I'm looking at the St. Nick guy, okay? Because while I look at Santa Claus, he's built upon this guy, okay? So I'm on the thing because it's my class, okay? And then I got this guy here that represents the church, which is supposed to be St. Nick, and then the Santa Claus that's built upon him to emphasize the lesson, the corrupt church and Santa. Documentary watch. And in all his knowledge, he says, that thumbnail you have for your next live, could someone consider that acting? How could anybody be acting on a picture, okay? On a flyer? Number two, as I know you aren't literally looking at that Santa in your office. Well, I ain't literally looking at, so I am literally looking at this Santa picture. But concerning this thing right here, I ain't even looking at Santa to begin with. Okay? I'm turned literally, my back of my head is towards Santa Claus. So I'm not even looking at him. I'm looking at this guy right here. Okay? Me, the live person, I am literally looking at this picture right here. Me right there in that picture on the thumbnail. You know, that's me, right? But it ain't me like physically. It's not, I mean, it is me physically, but it's a picture. But me right now is not there on the picture. Okay? It is a picture. All right. It's not a scene being like that. It's literally just a flyer for the class. But because they're so trying to find hypocrisy, and this is what I told him. I did answer him before I came in this class. Okay. So he says that. And then Matt says, not only that, I want to add to the questions. All right. Not only that, but aren't those Santa idols, this guy right here, ain't the Santa idols in your perspective? Yes, it is. That's why I put it here to highlight the corrupt church and Santa. It's kind of like if, I don't know, if I walk in a Walmart or something and saw Buddha statues on the shelf, and then I took a picture and put it on Facebook and says, look at this abomination, turn away from it. Don't even buy this for yourself, since I know there are believers who got those things. So if I highlight it to tell you to turn away from it, and because I snapped a photo, or if I said, hey, y'all need to leave Thor alone, and somebody says, what's Thor? And then I go get a photo to show them what Thor is. Yes, it is an idol. Yes, I shared a picture of this idol for the purpose of showing the person this is what I'm talking about, so they can turn away from the thing or don't go near it. But in their quest to find hypocrisy in me, all right, could this picture be seen as acting? And because you're not literally looking at Santa in your office on that picture, then Matt comes behind it. Not only that, but aren't those Santa idols in your perspective? Okay. This is my answer to him. All right. I ain't see all the other things that they've been saying back there since I left out of there because I was about to start this class. I ain't been held up by these guys here. All right. So I told him, in your quest to find hypocrisy in me, you speak like a very ignorant person that has no wisdom or discernment. It's a picture. No one on it is literally there. I'm going to start this class and you should watch it. He did this the other day when we were talking about strife. Okay. And he was contending against me while I was trying to teach others how we to stay away from strife, rivalry, contention. Now he's supporting the thing that God hates. He's defending it through his research. And so me and him is going back and forth. So then he asked me a question. Pastor Dave, we're going back and forth right now, right? Yes. Then he says, well, does that mean we're striving? Yes. Wouldn't that be sin? Because he's trying to find hypocrisy in me, because I keep talking about we shouldn't be striving and contention and all this stuff. So he plays around with the dictionary. We're technically striving. So isn't that sin, Pastor J? To try to say, yeah, be consistent. That's why I did do that. Be consistent. My answer to him was, yeah, we're striving. in regards to whether it's sin or not, it is to you, not to me. Then he started laughing because he didn't understand what I was saying. All right. So then I explained to him what I was saying as they were laughing about it because they think that's not being consistent. So then I said, not using me as an example, I said, when a person is preaching the gospel or striving against Satan, striving against evil, right? Striving to enter the kingdom of God. That's strife, isn't it? Yes. Are they sinning? At first he said yes. If you go to Berea's channel and go back to that video, I think it was the live before last that they did over there. When I first said it to him, he was already in his flesh trying to find hypocrisy. So when I asked him a question, he answered it wrong. I had to double back. So I said, so if you're striving against Satan and darkness, for those that were there that's listening right now, if you can vouch in that comment section that you heard it, just like I got some witnesses, all right? But nevertheless, when I said, when somebody's striving against Satan, against evil, as they strive to enter the kingdom of God, that's striving, isn't it? Yes. Is that sin? Yes. I said, that's sin? Even another guy that I think he's like a black Hebrew Israelite or something. Even he was like, what? That's sin? To strive against the devil? Then he had to backtrack because now he can use some understanding that he got, and then understand that striving against the devil or darkness, though we're striving, is not sin unto us. To strive against evil is righteousness, not sin. I said, but in that same battle of striving, as you strive against the devil, he's striving back against you, isn't he? Now, when he's striving against you, is he sinning? Yes. I can't remember if he's the one who answered it. I know I said yes. Yes. So in one scenario, and I said that's the same thing with me and you right now. The one that's striving for the truth and righteousness, though he strives against a man to preserve or defend the faith, he's not sinning. But the one who's striving against him, that's striving against the light, he is sinning. When you always caught up in controversies and arguments that are just valueless and all this stuff and just searching for hypocrisy, you're going to say stupid, foolish stuff like this. We strive every day. Is it a sin? Not if you're striving against evil or defending the faith, it ain't. But striving against the light, striving against the truth, striving against God, you are sinning. That's why I tell them, you stop playing around with the words in the dictionary. We know what strive means. But whenever the Lord says don't strive or don't be jealous or don't be whatever, we know what way the Lord is meaning that. So stop playing games. They do that and they prohibit y'all from learning. But it's the kind of foolery that's going on here. And so now they're just finding every little thing that they could find, pull up music videos or whatever the case is to try to talk about acting. All right. So let them do what they do. But nevertheless, this is the type of stuff that happens. And then they get caught up in it and all the other stuff. And then they'll say, you know, your brothers and all this other bull crap. All right. That I don't never believe when they say it. Because they don't act like we brothers. And they argue against the Lord in righteousness and make excuses for y'all to beat each other up. And you know, it's just the sport, all these other little things. We talking about the idols, and I'm showing y'all guys, hey, listen, the Olympics, they still praying to false gods, Apollos and things like that. Like, we should stay away from these things. They'll come behind me and they'll start trying to pull up some, oh, well, if it was that bad, why would the Apostle Paul use it as an example in 1 Corinthians? It's so annoying. And Leo should know better because he's a minister in training. He should know better. Believe me, I take note. I might be quiet. I don't say much in that back chat. But I observe. These supposed to be fellow laymen and fellow laborers. We only agree about some things. But just like the Apostle Paul, when I'm in the middle of a meeting with the Sanhedrin, and you got the Pharisees and Sadducees on one side, well, I know the one thing to say to get both sides argue with each other. All right? So that's foolishness. This type of stuff, that kind of behavior is why when all of them get together, look how the chat section be during their broadcasts. There ain't no coincidence. They make excuses like, oh, we can't control people. Look at y'all in my chat section, but y'all know how y'all should act. And y'all got enough respect to act the appropriate way that Christ requires you, and that y'all know I expect that y'all should act because y'all supposed to be believers. We never make it over here as if like it's a barbershop and y'all just can have loose mouths, loose cannons, and y'all can just act however y'all act that day. Act all up in the flesh. One day maybe come around and say, hey, God, I shouldn't have been like that 3 weeks ago. It sounds good, blah, blah, blah. The characters you have that we preach about is the way that you should behave. You shouldn't be trolls. You shouldn't be giving the endless genealogies. That's why we always talking about who's the true Israel and stay there. The DNA and all that stuff is a waste of time. But they love to busy y'all with that. These men that aren't hypocrites, that ain't legalists. It ain't no coincidence that when they're doing their thing, y'all see how things go. When we doing our thing over here, y'all see how things go. Ain't no coincidence. So just as the apostle said, you believers, you brothers and sisters, y'all are the letter from Jesus. Let me put it this way. For everybody who's a teacher, okay, who's preaching about the gospel and all that kind of stuff, when you're teaching and preaching and pastoring and all that stuff over the people, or to the people, and tell them how to direct their lives and blah, 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 you're doing all that stuff. The result of your teaching and watching is a letter from Jesus Christ, whether you're doing a good job or not. So if I'm doing, let's say I'm doing classes on YouTube, right? Been doing it for years. And the doctrine's going forth, and we're talking about how you should live and blah, blah, blah. When people come over here, and yes, I'm a human. I can't make people do what the Lord wants, okay? But nevertheless, when you either look at me, look at the Deke, look at the brothers and the sisters in the community, you see how how service is ordered, or the order of everything, and those that's closer that see our families and see how all that's going, and or if y'all see me, in the midst of some other meeting on a panel or something like that, when y'all see my character, and then when y'all get me out of the panels, well, when I'm even in the panels, y'all see like what I keep trying to bring up or defend or whatever case, y'all see that, right? But then when you give me away and you actually see a class, like I'm doing a class, I ain't being interrupted by ignorant questions and people just trying to find any little thing, and y'all hear these teachings go forth, and then y'all see the people that are affected by the teachings, that's the proof whether I'm doing good or not. But if somebody else is doing classes and they're wasting your time, and every time they're doing something, it's always chaos going on. It's always people coming around yelling and calling each other names. There's always filthy speech. There's always that stuff going on, though they're supposed to be Christians. All that kind of stuff keep going on. That is a letter from Christ. They're doing a terrible job. Terrible job. Nobody's character is changing. They're hugging the heretics, as they would say. Hugging heretics all the time. Allowing for demons to come talk all the time. Entertain every little devilish conversation. Wasting people's time about things that don't matter. Arguing and strife and contention in the evil sense going on. People ain't learning to grow more in Christ. They're being entertained by myths and legends and praying to dead people, stuff like that. Instead of somebody that just knows the truth saying, this is heresy, this is a lie, this ain't the way you should go this way, and just end it. Instead, it just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Then when they're talking about, hey, love your neighbor as yourself, and we start going into details about that. But when we get into certain details about how to love your neighbor as yourself, everything stops. Everything gets cut off magically. It gets cut off. Get mistreated, but then you come knocking on the door asking for help. Stop it. So this is the type of stuff. That kind of stuff that I'm dealing with before this class, that type of stuff that be happening on the panels and in chat sections, and what y'all seeing here on the screen makes the gospel of Jesus Christ ugly. Ugly. The doctrine of Jesus Christ teaches the wife to submit to her husband in all things. But if you got some people over there that's being taught, now that submission ain't that kind of submission, and y'all 50-50, and this and that, and this and that, and now you got the wife, the husband tell her to do something, and then she don't be listening and giving back talk, and y'all allow that kind of stuff to go on, y'all making the gospel ugly. If you got slaves, and if we had slaves, there is slaves in this world, but if we had slaves in America that were Christians right now, and then I start to talk and say, hey, you brothers and sisters that are slaves right now, make sure y'all always obey your masters, whether it be cruel or whether it be kind. Remembering the will of God, it's better to suffer for doing good and suffer unjust treatment if that's what God desires, versus being punished and whipped because you're doing bad. So make sure that you always obey your masters and do your best to please them. Don't just talk nice when they're around, but then belittle them among the other workers when they turn their backs. Because then you, by not showing respect to them and being hypocritical, they won't show respect. And then all y'all be lousy, disobedient workers. So instead, slaves must obey their masters and do their best to please them, even if they're not treating you well right now. Learn endurance. They must not talk back. Don't talk back no matter how much you feel justified, because you don't have the right to talk back to the one that has authority over you. And don't steal. They stole me, I'm going to steal their stuff. I'm going to steal their possessions. I'm going to steal their slaves. But must show themselves to be entirely trustworthy and good. Something like what that dude's name was in that story, the actual slave guy, Uncle Tom. That good old Christian obedient slave that showed himself trustworthy and good. And when he had plenty of opportunities, he could just run away with his master's money and all that stuff. He kept coming back, being an honorable person. And you know what they said about him? That man found religion. He made the gospel of Jesus Christ beautiful. But every time he's brought up, it's always in a negative sense. And who are the ones always calling somebody Uncle Tom? All them rebellious little Harriet Tumblins, little Nat Turners running around here. Always ready to run, always ready to complain, always ready to get mad about something. No endurance. Always ready to clap the hand and lift up the person that took somebody else's possessions, because they feel it was justified. But the Apostle said, you must show yourself to be entirely trustworthy and good. Then they will make the teaching about God and our Savior attractive in every way. But all the people they hand clap, what happened? What happened after Nat Turner's revolt? Did they make the gospel of Jesus Christ, because he was a preacher of the gospel? Did he make it beautiful? Or did he make it ugly and cause people to get suffering even more? Even people that had nothing to do with it. You like hand clap Harriet Tubman because she got some people free, but how did the people view her as a result of that? How did they view the gospel? Paul said, your letter. What kind of letter were these people reading when they're watching people like Nat Turner? What kind of letter are they reading when they watch somebody like Manny Pacquiao knocking men out in the ring? What kind of letter are they reading? What kind of letter are they reading when somebody like, what's that girl name? Bianca Belair in the WWE, supposed to be a Christian. What kind of letter they reading when she up there immodest and slamming bodies and all that other stuff and being arrogant and slapping her butt cheeks as a celebration dance? What kind of letter are they watching or reading? What kind of letter is anybody who's watching the Christian church reading? What kind of letter are they reading when they watching this crap, this crazy crap? But a whole bunch of people that says, my right, my right, my right. All they keep talking about, it ain't pagan origin. You can't judge me. We're going to do it. You just don't come. If they don't believe, it's because they got stony hearts. It ain't got nothing to do with us in Christmas. Yeah, okay. But Apostle said, hey, if you're a Christian, but you live in ungodly, you can make the gospel unattractive. And what does that mean? That means you can stand in the way as a stumbling block from other people coming to the Lord because of the way you act. Not because they didn't just read the Bible and they heard the message, but they got stony hearts. They just didn't believe. No, because of how you was acting. They possibly could have possibly believe. Because you don't know who all the elect of God is. That same person you turned away today by the way you act may very well be the elect of God, and he just sends somebody else that don't make the gospel ugly to win them. You ever thought about that? You could be a stumbling block to people. If they're God's elect, they're going to get saved. Irregardless. God will just bypass you and use somebody else. But the apostle said, he didn't say, listen, then they'll read the Bible and then they would believe if you act right. No, he said, they're looking at you, the one who say you believe the message already. You need to be careful how you act because you could make the gospel unattractive. Yeah, we can talk about the story. Jesus Christ came, born in the manger. Yeah, we talk about the story. And the story is, thank the Lord, right? But after you finish talking, then the people observe and watch every person that say they believe the story already. And if they see you continue to live in darkness, that makes the gospel unattractive because they're like, why go over there? They're no different than me. They live just like me, but they saying if I don't become like them, I'm going to go to hell. Was Noah a wicked person that lived wickedly and therefore condemned all the people of his generation that ultimately died in the flood? No. What did the scripture say about Noah? It said by his faith, his obedience to God, when he was building that ark, he condemned his entire generation. So he was not like them. What about Lot? Was Lot a wicked person and was just like Sodom and Gomorrah, but he said he believed and that's why he got saved? No. It said Lot's righteous soul was vexed every day by what he saw and heard in Sodom. So he wasn't like them. Abraham, same thing. Every example you got, all those righteous people was not like the wicked people around them. They didn't continue on in darkness. And despite how they were living, condemned all their generation because they said they believe in Jesus. No. They said they believed in God, and then their faith worked through their actions and proved they believed in God because they didn't live like the wicked heathens around them and did through their righteous acts, the good deeds, condemned the unbelievers. That's why the apostle said, your godly lives is a sign to them they'll be destroyed. But what if the sign ain't living godly? Then they'll never know they'll actually be destroyed. When they look at you and you look just like them. They'll only see the sign that they'll be destroyed when you don't look like them. When you're set apart and holy. When your life is different than theirs. when you're not in the ring and telling them to get out the ring because they're destroying the handiwork of God. But if you're in the ring, you ain't being no sign showing they'll be destroyed because your life ain't different than theirs. You're just like them in darkness. If you sliding down the pole, Christian strippers, that's the actual thing. Christian strippers, you can't condemn the other strippers. Your life don't condemn the other strippers because you're just like them. If you're the filthy speech prankster, Christian person, your ungodly way of living that you get enjoyment out of doing evil things, that ain't a sign to the Kevin Harts of the world or Dave Chappelle's and them that they'll be destroyed if they don't stop their filthy speech and prankings and belittling people for a laugh. You're just like them. And if you say you believe in the Lord, but that's the life you live, you might get somebody to be convinced of the story, but you'll create a second hypocrite. Because when they watch and read the letter, which is the human person, that's an example, they see, oh, I can continue to do this while believing on Jesus. So you see, the scripture says, you, by the way you live, can make the gospel attractive or unattractive. And what happens when it's attractive? It draws them in. What happens when it's unattractive? You're ugly. It ain't just about reading the scripture, hearing the story, and when they hear it, they either gonna believe or don't believe. Yeah, okay. Yeah, faith comes by hearing the message about Christ. But how could you hear unless somebody preaches the message? But every preacher isn't verbatimly talking. There's another form of preaching or speaking or relaying the message. And that's how you act. Because through verbal speech, you can teach somebody something, and through actions, you can teach somebody something. Everybody ain't a verbal teacher, like a pastor or anything like that, or an elder and leading church services. That's a whole nother thing. But every person that professes to believe on Christ is a letter that people look at and read. And you're telling them some kind of message. And you're either making the gospel attractive or ugly. And you could stand in the way of someone else coming to the Lord. Don't be that person. There'll always be occasion for stumbling and temptation, or always occasion to sin, as Christ said. But woe to the one who causes it. Let's finish this. It's almost done.
In other countries, in Russia, babushka, in southern Germany, Frau Holder.
It is said on the night between the 5th and the 6th of January, she comes down from the chimney and brings presents to those children that...
I must say this. I must stop and say this. And then we finish this off. This is any believer, especially them brothers who just trying to find something and sharing the thumbnails and all this stuff in the back chat. Talking about go to this second in this video and tell me when you see it and all that dumb stuff I'm seeing right now. But anyway, let me say something to them and to other people that's like that. Is this. The truth of God is the truth no matter who says it. Whether it be somebody that preaches with good motives or impure motives. The Lord will judge the person that has impure motives. But if the message that the hypocrite said was true, the person who hears the message ought to hearken to that message. The reason why I'm saying that is let's say I was a big hypocrite. Let's say I was a giant hypocrite and was, I don't know, let's say I'm talking about striking attention and not being in a ring. And let's say one day you drive down the street and look into your local gymnasium and see me sparring with somebody. Be like, hey, Pastor Jay talking about no striking attention and rivalry. Look at him. And you snap a photo. And then y'all start laughing. Because y'all already do that. Y'all already fight and be in the rings and stuff. But I'm like, y'all need to come out of that. But then, like, when I'm done saying that to y'all, I go somewhere off in the corner somewhere, and I'm fighting in the ring and beating people up. And let's say you see it. Look at him. Now you share it with everybody. Look at him. He a hypocrite. He been talking about don't strife for contention and rivalry and stuff, and don't be in these rings. Look at him. He in the ring. In that scenario, I would have been found out to be a hypocrite. But does that do anything regarding the warning that I said, even though I was being a hypocrite and not practicing what I was preaching? No. So what happens here? They only did that because they were trying to find hypocrisy in me so that they could shut me up so they could continue to do what they want to do, which is already evil. Through me being exposed as a hypocrite, since I know it's not right and I shouldn't be doing it, but I'm doing it. When I get exposed as a hypocrite, if my heart be contrite, the exposure of my hypocrisy would then lead me to repentance. But it would seal the heart of those men over there that was trying to find hypocrisy in me so bad because they already didn't like the doctrine that was coming out of my mouth. So they already loved darkness and fighting and violence. So when they saw me in there, that just made them further not listen to the message about stopping violence. They say, look, he said stop the violence, but he's doing violence. Ha, ha, ha. And then I hear about it because everybody's like, whoa, Pastor Jay, yo, you're a hypocrite. And then I'll be like, oh, man, you're right. Let me stop it. Lord, forgive me. And I'll take a break or something and I'll come back later on. All right. But these men over there, that's like, ha, we got them. They continue violence. And then the Lord appears. Who will die? They will. Because they didn't hearken to the warning from God, which was to stop the violence. I was a hypocrite for a time, but I turned away because I knew it was wrong. But I got caught in my flesh. They took my fall, and the Lord used my hypocrisy to seal those who hated the truth all along. See, when we read Samuel and Kings, and we read in these scriptures and how God is hardening Pharaoh and how he went about it, and we watching how God brought these things about, how he destroyed that one nation that Israel went to fight. How did he do it? They went to fight him the first time, but because they sinned, God didn't allow Israel to win. I think it was Akai when they went and fought him. Read this in the Old Testament. They got their behinds tore up. They went running away. They were getting tore up so bad. Well, when they lost, this nation that already didn't serve God, but God used them as a vessel to punish Israel, they got cocky. It's like, man, we beat them so easy. So the next time that the children of Israel came about them, the children of Israel split into two groups. One went forward and the other one went behind to come up the back part of their village. The people, when they saw the people coming towards their village from the front side, they got so full of themselves. They said, man, we make light work of them. And they sent all their soldiers out of the village to go fight the children of Israel. What got them to do that? Their cockiness, because God allowed them to win the first time so easy. But when they vacated the entire village and left their wives and children back, and all the warriors went out there, the other group of the children of Israel came from the back part of the village and took over the entire village. And then they went and met from the other side, the children of Israel, and they enclosed that army that was so cocky and then destroyed them. So God used the sin of Israel so that this nation could become cocky, let their guards down, send all their warriors out, because they think they're going to make light work of the children of Israel the second time they go fight. But God had already chastised the children of Israel the first time and forgiven them of their sins. And so now they're fighting in faith of God. They go around the back side and the front side. The other people, remember the first fight, get cocky, send everybody out to fight them, think it's going to be light work, and they get destroyed. So be careful when you're trying to go find faults and hypocrisy in people to try to make room so that you can continue the evil you're already doing. You better hearken to the warnings of God. Because God's already shown how he can do this. Now let's finish this.
Have been well behaved.
There are documents from 18th century in which the Befana is expected to punish the children. They are bad.
Carboni. La Befana mi ha portato il carbone.
I think the Befana brought me coal because I didn't do my homework and I misbehaved. I must have been very nasty to my sister.
Today, the coal is edible and more of a symbol than an actual punishment.
Grandmother, but also a witch. Her ambiguity is one of the more important features of the Befana.
I feel like it hurt, man.
Like a grandmother, the Befana is connected to the fireplace, the central place of the home, in which the deads and the livings, they connected through the chimneys. And it's interesting that, like Santa Claus, also Befana come from the chimney. That is to say, to connect the real world and the other world.
So you see in these legends, the chimney is a portal, okay? So that's why Santa Claus and this girl and everybody keep coming through a chimney, okay? And when they're on the other side of the chimney, you notice in the Santa Claus myth and this witch lady myth, when those characters are on the other side of the chimney before they come down it, notice how when they're on that side, though they're not in the house with you, they can hear your songs and your prayers and what you asking for. And then they come down the chimney to give you what you asked for. So in these mythologies and these legends, the chimney, why they keep coming down the chimney, is because it's like a portal connecting the physical world to the spiritual world. Okay? And every time they're on the other side of that chimney, they're overhearing you, knowing what you're asking for, observing you from far, knowing you sleep and stuff. And then they come down at the right time when you sleep and give you the stuff you asked for. All right?
Today, in Italy also, Befana has to share the limelight with the red-suited Santa. For centuries, the sun has played a crucial role in Northern Hemisphere winter festivities. Rituals celebrating the shortest day and looking forward to the new are common to Scandinavian and Celtic countries. The Mari Lwyd, or Grey Mare, is an ancient Welsh rite for the Celtic goddess Rhiannon. The Mari consists of a mare's skull fixed to the end of a wooden pole with white sheaths concealing the person carrying the Mari. The group arrive at the door of the house or pub, where they sing several introductory verses. Then comes Punko, a battle of wits where the inhabitants of the Mari party outside exchange challenges and insults in rhyme. At the end of the battle, the Mari demands entry into the house and partakes of the hospitality.
You see how weird this stuff is? So they were literally outside this custom. It sounded like they were singing carols, but they were singing rhymes, and the rhymes were insults. They were insulting each other. And then after finish insulting each other, they walk inside and now they're singing. And somebody, what's wrong with what they're doing? They're having a good time with each other. This is so, it's kind of like trick or treat. Trick or treat is literally a threat. And then it just go across people's heads. And they be like, what's wrong with asking for candy? Like, oh my Lord, this is crazy.
Similar animal-themed rituals, this time with a goat, are common in Scandinavian countries too.
It was very common that the teenagers dressed up, and one of them was the julbock. And then they moved around to the houses, and they made fun, and they sang songs and so on. It's pagan. And we have rock carvings in Sweden from the Stone and Bronze Age, which show people in masks with animal horns. And then in the end of the 18th century, when we needed someone to come with the Christmas presents or julklapparna, it was the julgoat or julbocken. So he came and knocked on the door and came in with all the parcels, and he threw them around, and he still made some fun and noise and so on.
A bowl of rice grain porridge for Sweden's jultomte. In Iceland he is known as Jólasveina, and in Norway and Denmark, Julnisse, Nissa being an old form of Nicholas. He's a happy little creature, only 18 inches tall. According to legend, Tomte would chase away the naughty trolls, close the doors, and settle all the animals. Swedish children are not afraid when the floorboards creak at night or when the wind murmurs in the trees. They know that it's just the Tomte doing his rounds.
On Christmas Eve, the father or grandfather of the house says that, "Oh, isn't jultomten coming soon with all the julklappar, the presents?" And he is going to look for him, or he is going to buy the paper. And he went out, and then a knock on the door, and there comes jultomten. And he said, "Are there any good, kind children here?" And all the children say, "Yes, yes, yes." And then he comes in, and he gives away all the Christmas presents.
Undoubtedly, Santa crisscrossed the Atlantic during the first half of the 20th century. Our modern Santa might well have been influenced by Sweden's jultomte, as today's universally accepted image is largely due to a Swedish-American Haddon Sundblom and a well-known soft drinks manufacturer.
The campaign featuring Santa Claus actually came about as part of a marketing strategy. The winter months in the 1930s were not very good selling times for Coca-Cola. So they went to an illustrator named Haddon Sundblom. And what distinguished him, I think, is the fact that he had looked at the work of people like Thomas Nast. He looked at the work of Louis Prang with the American greeting cards. And he built on all of the things that he had seen. But his vision was a really specific vision. He really saw this Santa Claus as an outgoing person, somebody who really enjoyed the Christmas season. And his illustrations capture the very essence of the season itself. It's a happy time, it's a warm time, it's a time to be with family and friends. For Haddon Sundblom, Santa Claus was not a dwarf. He wasn't an elf. He was a full-bodied person. This was a person who was full-size, if not larger than life. There are no bad boys and girls in Sundblom's world. Everybody's good, and everybody's going to enjoy the season because Santa's going to bring them presents. Many people think that the red uniform that Santa Claus wears developed because Haddon Sundblom worked for the Coca-Cola Company and red is our corporate color. Well, that's a really fortunate accident for us, but in fact, the red-suited Santa had been well established before Sundblom came along to do his interpretation. These illustrations are timeless. They're not really bound to any chronological period, and they're as relevant today as they were when they were created.
Sunbloom Santa has undoubtedly become the norm throughout the world, and there's little doubt in these young people's minds about Santa's appearance. As he puts his feet up after another busy year delivering presents around the world, children of all ages can feel comforted that Santa's long journey from Turkey through the Netherlands and the United States, making the odd detour along the way, has landed him safely in the North Pole. And even though he has lost some of his status within the church, he is well on course to becoming mankind's most universally recognized character.
All right. We made it through it. All right. So you guys see, as we've been talking about these topics the last week or so, we spent most of that time dealing with the whole birthdays thing because that's the root of all of this. And if we had the same mindset that the believers had during the Lord's time and his apostles' time, then that would keep us safe from even going the way of Christmas. So we didn't even got to worry about where a tree came from, where the presents come from, and for this day, and elves, and then we don't have to be associated with those. We don't have to be even associated in the conversation as being pagans and things like that, because we're not even appearing to look like them. Okay. And we're not making a big deal about our own birthdays, so that way we don't get caught up in horoscopes and what's your sign and all these things like that too. But a change occurred, and then there was a man that had lived, that the Catholic Church, in its sinfulness, canonized and venerated, made shrines for, prayed to, and continue to pray to, that all the legends of the legends of Santa Claus is built upon this venerated Roman Catholic saint. So, so when you hear people say that it's not pagan in origin, some of the traditions are indeed borrowed from pagans, but Santa Claus is Christian in origin, only in the fact that a professing Christian is the story or legend that he's built upon. But when you look at the Christian that is built upon, you realize that the people that even got that person to that status to even have this legend and Santa Claus be built off of him is because they were started to venerate, canonize, and have a feast day for this particular person. And so the story about him continued to be added on to and embellished in the world, and all these little legends of Santa Claus come. And so in all the parts of the world, because we know it's a worldwide thing, but then sometimes the question is like, how did it become a worldwide thing like this? All right. And so to see this and see how this one legend from this one venerated saint of the Roman Catholic Church, the story goes as the Roman Catholicism and all that stuff continues to spread. The story about him continues to spread and embellish, and how they even take the different things that's testified about in the scriptures from the Gospels and add it on to little witch lady that the wise men went to ask about Jesus. And that's divination and sorcery. There's divination and sorcery. People already question about the star itself, but you talking about they went to a witch to try to find out where Jesus was at. So when they're doing stuff like this, you see these stories, and then you've seen around the world how the customs are so similar because they're all built upon the same myths and legends. And so in one place, they're leaving out milk and cookies. Another place is an apple and 2 carrots. And another place is like a bowl of porridge or whatever it is. And another place is something else. Over here, Santa Claus looks like a Roman Catholic Pope. Over here, Santa Claus got the Coca-Cola figure now. Over there, Santa Claus look like he's escorted with demons and a Black Peter. Over there, Santa Claus is the person that brings gifts is three wise men that now knows everything you want. The over here is a Christian lady with a crown. So, and the other one is a goat guy, a goat man that comes in. So, but all this is built upon this one myth and legend about a canonized Roman Catholic saint that a lot of these Protestant apologists that keep on referring to him would also tell you that is wrong, in regards to the veneration of saints and bowing down the statues to kiss them. But that's the that Santa Claus is based upon. That's how you even know about Saint Nick. If he wasn't canonized and venerated, we never heard of this man. It's only because he reached that God status up in there that you even hear about him. So there have been many generous believers, okay? Many generous believers that kept the commandments of Christ and died in faith, okay? But when you're hearing about only some of them, certain ones, then you realize these ones they've been venerated and all stuff. Got shrines dedicated to them. And they got relics and bones and teeth that people think connects them to them and people praying to them. And now you see the people rubbing statues, kissing it. Oh, bless it, and doing all this stuff, talking to objects they made with their own hands. They're just like the heathens around them. And so the Lord is telling us, come out from the midst of that. This is that beast that's written about in Revelation that seek to change times and laws, that would make war with God's people and overcome them, and also gain influence around the whole entire world. So stay away from these things. Don't be deceived into it. Don't follow up people that know what's wrong with giving presents. Take your sons and daughters to a store. See what they want that's on the shelf. That's good. Buy it from that day and let them enjoy themselves. Don't spoil them. But every once in a while, give them a gift out of the kindness of your heart. All right? But stay away from the Christmas trees, wrapping the presents, wait till the 25th to open it up. Santa Claus leaving out milk and cookies, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, little Santa hats. Stay away from all of that stuff. So you won't sin. That's the first thing, by celebrating birthdays, which the church was against. 2, you won't even be associated with pagans or accused of idolatry. Okay? By other people that call on the name of your same Lord. Instead, you can be in unity, not accused, not feeling guilty, living life the way that the apostles of Jesus Christ and the first 300 years of the church lived, without Christmas. So, brothers and sisters, y'all, Lord's will you have a good night, rest and food and all those things. Keep each other in prayer. Continue to fear the Lord as he continue to form us more and more in the image of Christ. And may the Lord protect you guys and gals. And if y'all don't see me the rest of this week, Lord's will, Sunday at 10:30 a.m. Central Time, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, we'll be back here for the gathering of the believers coming together. And as we continue to learn more and more about our Lord and prove it by the way that we live our lives. So with that being the case, brothers and sisters, till next time, peace.